technical issues, all the crap. They just ruined the whole experience for pretty much a bunch of people, right? And I think that's simply because they were cutting costs, like cutting corners every which way. The event in Asia was terrible. When you see the breaks, they organized an event in Monterrey, something that's like it is at least 6 months preparation to do something like that.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
It's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, good vibe.
Hello and welcome to HLTV Confirmed. We're here to talk about the amazing RMR week that we had behind us and the upcoming even more amazing week in action that we'll have in Denmark for the EU RMR B. Have some amazing guests. Everything is amazing tonight except SPUNJ's medical status, as he is not having a great time. Let's just say it like that. He's not feeling the best. So I'm going to be stepping into the host role for a bit. Before I announce the guests, I can talk about BitSkins, one of our sponsors, SteelSeries and 22Bet. Thanks to them for sponsoring the show and making this possible. And now, to introduce our wonderful people, Striker, you all know him. Not gonna mince words on this guy, amazing guy. Kassad, you're not feeling what's happened. What's with the face?
I was gonna sneeze, but it was like super close, but I didn't want to do it into the camera. So
I was on the edge. You were edged.
I just saw that reaction to your introduction of me, and I was like, interesting.
Enough.
It's just
How are you
sneezing.
How are you feeling?
Not
Your
bad,
vibe
not
check?
bad.
What's your vibe check?
Listen, I'm on 22 days on a carnivore diet.
Okay.
That's just straight up meat and water and put salt and pepper, like beef and like pork, whatever. Some people are gonna hate me for it, but I feel really freaking good, right? Energy levels are through the roof. I have focused energy over everything, but I was enjoying to some degree, well, as much as I could because of the stupid broadcast. The first group of RMR, the games were like pretty good, unlike the broadcast. But overall, I'm pretty stoked for the second group as well, and what's coming after that.
Do you think, is there any connection between that diet and being like angry and agitated and like wanting to tell the people how you actually feel? Is there any connection, just so we know?
So can you say it again? You can't.
Is there any connection if you just eat meat diet that you're like gonna be more agitated than usual, or is it gonna be like normal?
I was thinking that I'm gonna be more like because I can get my usual sugar and stuff like that. Was like that in the first 7 days, but right now I feel great. I feel like fully relaxed. I wake up with a lot of energy, so no connection there. Just the other thing that were pissing me off.
vENdetta, we were just talking before we went live about your amazing diet. You're known as the most I think you're the inverse of Maui Snake. I feel like you're on the other side of the spectrum of the diet. Can you please explain to people how your event life works in terms of what do you eat?
Yeah, no, so obviously Maui is the kind of guy, he's like a foodie who eats everything pretty much. Like I'm sure he forages in between, on the way home from the venue to a hotel, etc., and tries to eat that when he gets back to the hotel. Me, on the other hand, I just kind of stick with the tried and true. 20 nuggets day in, day out. If they don't have nuggets for some reason, then you got to go with a pepperoni pizza. And that's my life whenever I'm on the road. And it's fantastic. So Kassad, if you feel like
and he looks great.
Diet,
he looks great, so it must be working.
Yeah. So if you feel like the carnivore diet isn't necessarily giving you everything you want from it, even though it sounds like it is, 20 nuggets a day and a chocolate milkshake. Could be better.
Perfect.
Amazing scenes. Okay, let's start talking about the RMR. Let's start talking about the general kind of takeaways. There's so many things to talk about. When you look back at the last week, let's start with Kassad. Kassad he's hungry for this. What is the first thing that comes to your mind about the last week that we witnessed of CS?
Are we talking about like the CS, like the Counter-Strike part of the event part of the whole thing?
Let's start with the event part.
But the event part was absolutely garbage. Well, I'll say it like that, straight up. Like starting from if we didn't have like our colleagues who did like an amazing job doing the cast, like bringing the hype and everything, like all of our people that we know, like Hoka, Dinko, Anders, Maui, everybody else was Crony, Londers, whatever, right? All these people did a sick job, but the fact that we didn't have an analyst desk, the casters are doing the interviews, all the shit that's going on, the technical issues, all the crap, they just ruined the whole experience for pretty much a bunch of people, right? And I think that's simply because they were cutting costs, like cutting corners every which way. The event in Asia was terrible. When you see the breaks, they organized an event in Monterrey, something that's like it is at least 6 months preparation to do something like that. Because I was in Mexico in 2021 in Monterrey playing the RMR with xertioN back then, and I'll tell you, it's not an easy thing to organize even one practice room, that you can play from, let alone organize a full event. So whatever they did, on the top of the fact that they cut costs and had probably short staffed, in every aspect of the organization of that event, it was like a disaster, because simply you have all these people running around doing multiple jobs because there is not enough people to cover everything. And obviously they're not experienced, so they're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's going to make event being awful like it is, right? So from the execution part and the whole broadcast side of the thing, the event was horrible. CS, on the other hand, was absolutely amazing. We had sick results. We have people who are supposed to be qualified. For example, you have BNE, you have Into the Breach, you have all these new teams, not new teams, but some of them are new qualifying. We have FaZe, who absolutely deserve not to be qualified after the abysmal performance in those best of threes. Luckily for them, they have the LCQ to qualify between those 6 teams in the 2 groups. Yep. So there is one chance for them, but overall,
Cinderella run.
Yeah, it's a story that it can be developed in something great, from the LCQ into the winning the major. It's possible, why not, right? But they didn't play well, so they lost, right? And they lost rightfully so. I was watching their game mostly, for example, against Mouse and against Navi on Inferno. The guys are just, this side is terrible.
Let's keep that under the lid just for a moment, and we'll get into all of the CS parts a bit later. Especially, obviously, FaZe and VP are the biggest storylines in terms of teams. One that didn't qualify and one that could not qualify, right? For you, vENdetta, what is the takeaways? Obviously, what Kassad was talking about, just to give some context for the EU RMR, there was, I'm pretty sure, just 6 people, right, that was working. Maybe I'm missing. So essentially, they were doing tri-casts, which I also don't understand. If you have so few people, why are you doing tri-casts instead of rotating people? This is suddenly a thing to do tri-casts all the time. 2 people is enough. We've done 2 people cast all the time. But yeah, then also doing the interviews. And I think what you mentioned about people making mistakes. I think the whole thing with the VP interview is, a person that's not an interviewer is being, casting, running from one position to another, and being put into a position where they're kind of, let's say there's a bit of pressure applied, and of course they don't know how to react properly in that situation. I don't think we can, fault the person a lot for doing what they did and not asking the question essentially about VP and the swap of Norbert and everything. But yeah, that was a great setup of me asking you a question and then going.
Perfect.
Yeah, how this thing works. Let's go.
In all honesty, it wouldn't be. It's not that much of a detriment, because again, it's a lot of echoing really what Kassad mentioned. The fact that again, we're getting into major. Yes, it's an RMR. It's not the actual major in that sense, but you kind of do expect things to be ramped up towards it. The broadcast as well, in addition to the CS. So it does feel like a bit of a letdown that you have. Obviously technical issues in a bunch of the other RMRs, depending on locations and everything. And then also the fact that people are tasked to do multiple jobs. Again, you're oftentimes hired to be a commentator or a color commentator or a desk person or host, etc., or an interviewer. And the fact that you're kind of mixing roles, etc., that feels very 2014-ish. Which I kind of hope that we've put past us. And yeah, you do get a bit of a faulty result. And also, I think it's unfair, obviously, for the people who are put in those situations as well, because yeah, you're not going to perform to your best ability when you're doing something that you haven't trained in doing for many, many years, right? So you do get a lackluster result, which is to no fault of your own. You've kind of just been put into that position by the TO, and you kind of have to run with it. You can't exactly just get on your back heels and say no, right, when you're in that spot. So that was disheartening. Again, the CS was great across, honestly, like, or if not great, very entertaining at the very least across all regions, which is a great sign. And yeah, I am a sucker for upsets. And then again, I am the one person or one of the few people who feel like these already partnered teams and so on, who have a very, very cushy life for 99% of the year. If they mess up, like I'm perfectly fine with them messing up and not getting a bit of a benefit, not getting, the better seed for every single round. Like I'm perfectly happy with that. You've had such a easier way of like maintaining the role of tier 1 than it is to break in for such a large part of the calendar year, that once you actually have someone like Into the Breach getting an opportunity to qualify, I feel like it would be a disservice to basically like stack the odds against Into the Breach just because they're performing well. So yeah.
Can I add a couple of things to this before we move on? Because vENdetta was saying such a nice thing, like he was like politically right, like saying like correct things. He doesn't want to, step on anybody's toes. Like everything was nice, but the thing is, like, I'm thinking about the situation. First of all, the broadcast crew that was there did an absolutely amazing job. We just, we need to accept, establish that. We need to like talk about it. They did an exceptional job doing like all these things they were forced to do, right? Multiple casts, doing the interviews, doing the pre-game, post-game, like between the maps, all this stuff that they were supposed to do, and they were like hired to do one thing: cast the games. Like, where is the A crew, if you want to call it? Like, where is Maniac? Where is Yanko? Where are all these people like to do these things? I'm sure they're not gonna refuse work and refuse money. Like, that would be just stupid, right? At least most of them. But the other thing is like about the VP thing and the question in the interview. Like, who the fuck are you to tell me that I'm not allowed to ask you any questions? Like, are you a partner of Valve? Are you a partner with like BLAST? Who the fuck are you? Like, I'm gonna go and ask the questions because you have obligation towards thousands of your fans that are buying the products from your sponsors, that are paying you money, that you can pay the salary of those players, and you come to me and tell me that I'm not allowed to ask you a question when there is the biggest controversy in RMRs so far, where you swap up a player mid-tournament.
Unprecedented. This never happened. I'm pretty sure this never happened.
The way it was supposed to be handled, you ask a question, right? What's happening? Can you elaborate on whatever? Like, and then he replies, "Listen, this is a more question for a management. I'm not really allowed to talk. I'm focused on the game. Our team is focused on the things that are in front of us. Yeah. You can talk to our management, and the management issues a statement and gives an interview or whatever the fuck they do, or team manager, whoever the fuck is responsible for that. They just came out and said like, we can't fucking ask a question, but fuck you and fuck your questions. That's it. That's what I have to say about that. So." I mean, when do we draw the line with this? Where is the line?
I don't know, Striker, if you want to add on to this, or
no. I mean, this is not new behavior from teams. I mean, we have to deal with this shit all the time, and lately we've really put our foot down on terms of that. Like, if you're gonna do that, we're just not gonna do interviews like this. It just doesn't make sense. Like, we're like, it's gonna reflect on us, right? Like, we're just gonna look stupid if we don't ask questions that are mega fucking obvious, right? That are just like so fucking obvious that people would be like, why the fuck didn't we talk about that?
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, it just reflects badly on whoever does the interview, and I feel bad for it was Cody, right, who had to do that, I think.
Yeah, and I think also it is a bit of a thing. I can't remember who tweeted this out over the weekend, but obviously it was right after the whole VP ordeal, that it feels like a lot of the teams in esports as a whole are kind of cushioned when it comes to being asked critical questions, and to the point where like you can become the team who just says no comment to a bunch of stuff. That's better than just not be, telling TOs or talent that you're not allowed to ask them, or journalists they're not allowed to ask the question. If you want to avoid it, at least say it with words that you want to avoid the question in that sense, instead of just basically going through the most benign PR-esque and standardized interview of all time, where it's like, yeah, so how do you feel? Yeah, you're playing this guy and these guys in the next round. How do you feel about that? Yeah, do you like your chances to qualify? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
like,
who would you like to
like
play in the next round?
Yeah, exactly. That
I
gets
mean,
obviously so like, yeah, that gets boring, obviously, very quickly.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, if they didn't want the players to be put into position to answer that question, then just say you're not going to do the interview, or even better, just you do the interview, manager person, whatever, someone from the team can be there and do it
and just take the heat. Take the fucking heat, right, dude? That's your job to take the heat off your players if they're like under a lot of pressure, and obviously they will be if something like this gets dropped on them, especially, you know, if it wasn't their decision. Like, they're not supposed to answer those questions. It wasn't their call in the first place, right? So you come in as the manager or whoever is like responsible at least for the communication side of this and like explain what the situation is. Okay, we haven't, like, players weren't involved in this or were involved in this, whatever, you know, your team has a match to play. Okay, you don't want to put pressure on them. That makes sense, but at least take the heat off them, you know? And not in this way, you know, where like even you could see even Fame was kind of like, obviously I don't see into his mind, but throughout that interview, I was thinking that he's just like almost expecting that a question to come anyway, you know, like there was like that little bit of a vibe that almost like both sides knew what was happening, but it wasn't happening, you know? So it was just such a stupid situation, man.
It's also, I don't know if any of you like caught the following statement that came from VP like the next day or 2 days later. Yep. But even that statement came like, it almost doesn't answer any questions. It almost just like confuses people even more. There is no like, it is kind of how some of these teams expect the interviews to go. And in terms of like, you ask a question, especially if it's like something super controversial, it's fine. Like sometimes you're going to have an interview, someone's going to give you an answer and you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to move on because like there's other things that are important to talk about. So I'd rather focus on things that I'm going to get something from than trying to like drill into something that's not going to lead anywhere. But if there's like a breaking key topic, which in this position, this part is just like, okay, we changed the player mid-tournament and we're going to be eliminated, and we are eliminated in the end, reigning major champions, then we need to have some like actual answers and follow-up questions to understand what you're saying, and not just put out a statement that's like semi-vague and be like, oh, now we answered everything, I hope you're all happy. Like, we're not happy. I don't feel like anything makes any sense in this whole situation.
Like, I can understand the fact that like these things, like it's a big controversy, changing a player, that's whatever, right? It happens. Like I can see it, like, you know, God knows what happened between the players or what the situation was, right? I don't even care about that. Like there are processes to deal with that, because like I said, there's how many thousands of fans are watching that, you know, and then you have to go and do an interview, like pretend like nothing's happening, holding the freaking mic, is like, yeah, how did your game go? And then, you know, there you go. And everybody in the chat, everybody at home, everybody who is watching, like everybody's like expecting that question and the answer. And there are processes to do that. Like you can actually say, like, listen, right now the situation is a little bit tough in our team. We are just looking into our game. I can't really give you more on this topic, but our management will deal with it as soon as possible. And that's a perfectly fine answer.
Yeah.
You cannot just go out and say something like that. It's just not good. Like it ruins the whole thing, right? It's just, we need to draw the line when it comes
feels
to
like we're living in a fairy tale world where like things don't, like, they happen but they don't happen, and you're just like, well, you close my ears, la 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 la, it's all fine. Like, and then it's like there's just magically a Norbert on the server after 2 matches, and then my friend that just watches casually CS is like, what the fuck is happening here? Who is this guy? Where was he the first 2 games? So yeah, we can move on from that slightly, I guess. I think what I could do is bring out some of the people's opinions on the events, and kind of use that as a kind of like a segue into different conversations that are happening. Some of them are about the format, some of them about just the issues that were happening at the event. I don't know if Striker, you have anything to add before we do that, because we didn't really give you a lot of time.
No, I mean, the only thing I would say in terms of like positives that would be taken away from that whole situation and how that broadcast was handled was the actual people who were on the broadcast, because I generally dislike when these RMRs are like all about the tier 1 talent and all that stuff, and like all the tier 1 talent is brought in for teams that they just have no experience with in terms of like actually watching them and things like that. And so I like that, you know, this, whatever, if it was an actual decision, like on purpose or not, I just want to give props to the people who actually did it, because I think a lot of them, like a lot of the teams they were very familiar with, clearly from kind of like casting those like online games, online tournaments and stuff like that. And you could tell that there was like real knowledge behind like from those people who were covering it on the broadcast. So at least from that perspective, I was happy with the people that were covering the tournament.
I think I saw this typing.
Yeah, it was me. It was me. I want to add to this. I just found out whatever happened with xertioN and the whole situation. That's why I was typing and responding to my, secret source. Yeah. And then when you find out, it's going to be even more ridiculous. Like I can't share because obviously I have to keep it confident.
From this,
it's just unbelievable.
From the statement that VP put out, it almost felt like I'm gonna say what it felt like to me, because this is the annoying part. Like, you don't want to speculate as people that have, a platform. You don't want to speculate and be wrong and then be like, oh, just like spreading misinformation. But when people don't want to say anything, then you kind of have to. And from the statement, it almost felt like there is this whole visa situation. And it almost felt like they agreed, like they found a visa appointment for xertioN. And then he didn't show up because there was a sentence saying like, players have to have some responsibility, for example, showing up on time for an appointment. And then there's the whole, like, he maybe couldn't play the Paris Major because of his visa not being ready. Am I on the right track there, kassad?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I was about, wasn't there a deleted tweet from xertioN?
Yeah.
Who said that, my visa wasn't about to expire after all?
It's not feasible.
He said it was going to expire the day of the 5th round, but that he would be able to leave on that day, like just whenever the match finishes, basically.
During the night,
So, which is, but by the way, it's kind of curious, isn't he? Doesn't he? I thought he had German citizenship too, but I guess I could be,
maybe not.
Could be off.
I guess kassad will keep this with himself.
I can't. Like it's not on me to spread. I was just explaining why I was typing. Why did you hear typing? That was because of me. That's why. No, nothing.
All right.
Okay, let's go into the first into the Vox Pop by 22bet. There's a couple of opinions that I brought in. Let me just find them here. Where are they? Okay, so this is the question: how satisfied are you with the results at the RMR and the event itself? I think the general vibe was like people that were fans of, like, for example, Mongolz or Navi, they were happy because their teams went through, and people that were fans of like FaZe, for example, weren't that happy. So
that's shocking. Honestly, it's like unheard of.
You know how it is, and the people that were unhappy were unhappy about the format, about the tech issues, about all the other things except the team's performance. But yeah, bring in the first one, Lucas. So this is the first opinion from Mado CS. Is like, oh, seeding was a bit off, but everything else was good. And making upsets possible is great because that's kind of exciting. That's the one side of the coin. And then the other side is the following opinion, which was blah blah. Love seeing all the underdogs not top 20 making deep runs, but I'm worried that it will be similar to Rio, where a lot of fans lost interest because of the asterisks of the results. In the Legends stage and playoffs, there weren't a lot of teams that were well known, essentially. So let's just start from there. What do you guys think? Like, how does this reflect potentially on the major, considering we had a few upsets and maybe we won't have some of the biggest teams and we don't have the reigning major champions won't return to a major for the first time? Is this a format problem or is this a performance problem?
It's a performance problem, 1000%. And again, I kind of hate the opinion that people have of like, oh yeah, no, like one of the assumed favorite teams didn't make the tournament, therefore the tournament is not as valid. It's like, no, that team that you assumed to be better weren't. Like, simple as that. They didn't perform on the day, and people are just so stuck in a name value for a lot of these teams. So because they hear a Cloud9, they expect them to be at the top. Because they hear a Navi, they expect them to be at the top. Because they hear, and so on and so on. But if that's how we're going about it, there'll never be room for any newcomers. Again, like, people weren't necessarily respecting Gambit youngsters until they're ending up, going far in Katowice before they're starting winning tournaments, which is like a pretty ridiculous, like, very, very tiny hole to get through, really, in order to basically have any sort of semblance of respect amongst viewers and fans in general, right? Like, you can Like being a top 15 team in Counter-Strike is extremely fucking hard. But it seems like if they're not a top 6 team consistently and always, you know, being in quarterfinals of major tournaments, then who really cares? Like I feel like it's a very closed off mindset that I dislike strongly, and I think it's not beneficial for people watching as well. I think you find more enjoyment in being open to seeing new teams, new names, because eventually, let's say in 5 year times, the people that you've been discrediting and not, you know, batting an eye over or hating because they knocked out, you know, an assumed favorite earlier, they're going to be the ones who are at the top. Like that's a natural progression of how the game works. So I really dislike that. And it's definitely not a format issue. There's so many chances to kind of right your wrongs through a Swiss system, especially when elimination game is BO3. Like at that point, it's on you.
Yeah.
Go. No, you take it. Just take
I mean, what I was going to say is just like, this is kind of what makes majors beautiful for a lot of people, I think, because almost every other tournament has some sort of an invite system, right? Like straight invite system. A lot of it is partnered, obviously, you know, BLAST being the biggest like proponent of that system. But of course, even ESL has a lot of partnership slots, particularly in Pro League, but even in all the other tournaments. And so like majors, I think Snappy has said it consistently, like majors are the easiest to qualify for. Basically, because, you know,
if you're on the outside.
If you're, of course, on the outside,
Because
obviously, if you're FaZe, like you're gonna get, if you're FaZe, you're gonna get invited everywhere. Obviously,
I mean, if
like,
you're
I'm not
EG,
talking
you're
about
gonna
FaZe.
get invited apparently as well. So
just if you have money, you're gonna get invited. Doesn't matter what's your name.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly what makes it beautiful, right? Like BNE for the third fucking time in a row, they're gonna be at a major, you know, and that's an amazing story. They have no org, and that's literally how they paid their way through being able to compete. This is like such a fucking like old like Golden 5 story where they had to win tournaments, you know, to be able to go through. And this is like, obviously we have more money now, and so it's not as bad as that, you know, where you literally have to win tournaments to be able to survive almost. But still, it's kind of like a similar story. Yeah, kind of like that. At the time, that was obviously a much bigger issue than now as well. So just in general, I think that's such a close-minded thing to say that, you know, your favorite didn't make it, and so the tournament is shit as a result. No, I mean, I see it the exact opposite way.
I mean, let's just be clear. Swiss it's like triple elimination essentially, so you can lose 3 times, and with the last chance qualifier, you have like a 4th time you can lose and actually still go through. Obviously, in EU, there's a lot of good teams, and there's the BO1 aspect, and there's some of the aspects of the pre-event seeding that is probably bad and can be adjusted in some ways, but at the end of the day, if you're going to lose 3 games, then I don't know how many times can we help you to get out of this hole, right? If you look at any sport, if you look at football, like how many times can you lose in the World Cup and still go through? Like once or twice max, and that's it, you're done.
The problem isn't the Swiss system itself. It's part of it. The second problem is the seeding.
Yeah.
Like the seeding is garbage. Like, okay, the thing is, like, I'm not going to go over on Fnatic because it's not their fault. They were playing whoever was in front of them, right? Yeah. From the round 1 till round 3, and the same goes for every single team. You can't blame the teams. You can't put like any kind of asterisks or whatever. They were playing whoever's in front of them, and they beat them and they qualified. Same goes for FaZe, who lost, for BNE, who qualified. They just played who they're given to play against, right? That's it. The problem is the Swiss system plus the seeding is just outdated anymore. Like best of ones should never be the thing anymore. Never, ever in the CS, especially in the highest tier of competition like the RMRs, the majors, it should never be a thing. What is wrong with like 16 teams, 4 groups, GSL double elimination? You win 2 best of 3s, you go through, you lose 2 best of 3s, you're out.
I mean, we had a lot of problems with seeding in that. That's the problem, yeah.
Sorry?
The exact problem with that was there was seeding issues, and there was like that whole Cologne 2016 group that had like 3 top 4 teams, you know, and shit. And so the same issues will...
seating. We have the rankings, we have fixed the seating. It should be doable. Yeah. It shouldn't be that hard. Like right now, we saw what happened to FaZe in Rio, right? They were playing Vitality into, who was it, Cloud9 or Navi? Or
it was Cloud9, Vitality, and
Cloud9, Vitality, BNE, and BNE, right? They should, I mean, in the 0-2 of the first day, because you have 50-50 matchups. No matter like if you're the favorite, we have a strong competition back then. Like between the teams, teams are close to each other, right? When it comes to, especially in a best of 1. Like I can guarantee you that some of those results wouldn't happen in a best of 3.
But that was what happened, if I remember, wasn't that was Cloud9 playing great? No, that wasn't. That was the first part. But there was also like some weird best of one losses that set up that, right? Otherwise, it doesn't happen.
No, it was because like the four best teams on the Swiss stage were like playing against each other or some shit. Like Vitality were playing. I don't know. Vitality were playing Cloud, whatever, something like that.
I think the solution is in the past. The issue is that Valve doesn't want to rely on like other rankings. They don't want to do this and that, right? For the major, that's at least how we understand it. But now that they have their own ranking, I think the solution for the seeding is quite simple. Like the main problem is that they seed based on half of the teams based on the last major, which is bad. That's just bad. Like 6 months ago, the results, like if you made top 4 or top 2 or top 8, like that is not going to be relevant 6 months from now. Okay, you can re-invite them to the RMR, but the seeding of both the RMR groups should just be based on the Valve ranking that they use to invite for the close qualifier. So if you use them to invite to the close qual, why don't you use that again to just make the groups for the RMR itself?
I don't understand, man, why they're so hung up on like seeding teams based on like the last major that happened 6 months ago, and like shitloads of results have happened since then, and obviously the state of competition.
Because it's easier, Striker. Because it's.
But I don't think
I don't think it actually is easier because
for them, because they don't care about the consequences, right?
I mean,
so they can just look at a finalized sheet. He's like, this is 1 through 16. Oh, and
just
teams are still here.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
sure,
but it's much more. But it's actually much more difficult to come up with that system than just go after all the qualifiers are done and all that stuff. You just go by, okay, this is our ranking. This is the 1 through 16, and this is how we're going to spread them into these groups.
Yeah.
It's much easier than like
figuring out external, right? Like everything they have based on
it's not.
last major is internal, and that's
okay, right. But
right,
yeah, I mean, of course.
But they already gave that. They already showed that they're okay with taking other results, right?
So, No, I'm not saying they're consistent or it makes any sense. I'm just saying that's
the thing. Like we're never going to have a perfect seeding, right? We're never going to, because at the same time, we don't know who the best team is going to be at the event. It's impossible to know. Like that's why we have the event to decide who is the best team at the event. It's not about like, seed 1 to 16, and then the results are going to be exactly like this 1 to 16. That's never going to happen. Never happened. It doesn't even make any sense. But what we need to avoid is like being very bad with seeding, and like seeding FaZe as number 7 is bad. That's not how
terrible.
It should be.
Yeah, they just won the freaking Grand Slam, right?
Yeah,
they won the Pro League. It's just we don't look it to be perfect, right? We don't want it to be super, but we need something in between.
Be fine. Yeah. So that's why, like, it doesn't matter if it's like HLTV ranking, ESL ranking, or their ranking. It's more or less going to be okay-ish. Like, there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 teams that are going to be like, maybe they should have been a bit higher seeded. But then you just work that in the actual event, and that's why like the mid-event seeding is useful, because a team that is performing better than they're expected should be rewarded for that. They shouldn't be like, you shouldn't be like bait going and playing like all 3 favorites of the group just because before this event you weren't that big of a name, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have to be like number 1, number 2, number 3 team in the group. So all in all, like I just hope that gets fixed in the future. There's obviously other things about the format that we could talk about for like the next majors, but it's not even that relevant. It's not going to be changed right now. I don't think so. So I don't know. Let's bring up another comment that we had, the next one in line. Let me click this. Lucas. Okay. This is one of the issues that was brought up. Striker, you wrote about this as well. So Skinny T says, I don't like the seeding issue after round 4. Technical difficulties in Asia and America were insane. Also, the whole integrity stuff, it was mostly fine. And I'm not the biggest fan of the new HUD. The HUD is a whole different thing, but I don't think we have time to get into that. That's kind of the main things were essentially seeding issues and the technical issues in Asia and America. And I think we can start with the seeding thing, which essentially robbed Gamer Legion of a legend spot. So Striker, can you explain how this happened?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's...
Again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure that that's what he means. Maybe it's just because of the round 5 matchups that happened, FaZe and Mongolz, for example, like facing off against each other. And kind of like something similar also happened in NA, where it happened kind of like where, if the seeding works out differently, I'm not sure MIBR would have been out. There was like Fluxo versus Paqueta instead of like MIBR against one of those teams, and Complexity facing the other. And like some of these, matchups in the 5th round, and obviously, if you look at it on on the value of before the tournament, who the favorites were and like how it should have worked out. It would have been better if you matched up some of those teams differently, right? But what you're talking about was obviously also an issue, and I'm not sure why it's even the case, because there's actually time to wait for the whole tournament to finish. I mean, it just all fucking like plays into each other. It feels like almost like this whole system where you only have four legend spots in one RMR, and so but some teams will finish in the 3-1 bracket, and one of them gets the free spot, but the other two have to play against each other. This whole system doesn't make sense to me. Like, it's so unnecessarily complicated. I feel like there's got to be a way to make this less fucking complicated, right? I mean, it's just every single major we have, it causes some sort of issues, these inconsistencies about how easy it is for somebody to skip an entire major stage compared to another team, for example. And there's like one best of one match that could be the difference or whatever it is, and like it's kind of crazy how detrimental this can be to like a team. I mean, this happened to Gamer Legion specifically in this RMR, but it also happened before to Spirit. I think they ended up winning that match anyway, and I think they qualified, but it happened the same exact way in Rio. So unfortunately there was a precedent, and so maybe Blast was like, okay, happened before, we can just do it the same way again. But obviously, like the way that they decided is they look at the 3-1 teams, they look at which one has the highest difficulty score, that one gets the free spot, the other two play against each other for the second spot, right? But the seeding was only decided after 4 rounds instead of 5 rounds, and so you don't have the entire picture of how the competition unfolded, and so you don't actually know which of the 3 teams had the hardest route, and so are the best teams in that group technically, because they got there through playing harder opponents. So I think it just doesn't make any sense. Like, it's so illogical the way that system was used. I don't think that score should even be used to like get teams to skip entire major stages. I think that's crazy, because it is just meant for seeding. It is really just meant to decide matchups rather than actual spots. That's crazy to me.
And those matchups are then played, right, to decide who is better. It's not like,
exactly.
These are the seedings, therefore this team is better, so we don't need to play the game, and this guy is automatically now a legend stage team. So
I mean, that's exactly the thing you were touching on.
Stupid Swiss system, sorry, but it's just like, imagine if you had like 4 groups, like I said. Seeding number 1 is Liquid, Furia, Complexity, and Pain, who's performing well. Seed number 2 is like whatever, MIBR, Fluxo, whoever, right? You have top 8 teams battling out. Top 4 are going in and then play their own little playoff when they reach top 4 for that legend spot. And the top, like the last 5th, 6th, 7, and 8 are playing their own little playoff for the 5th spot and the final spot at the major. Like, how difficult is that? That is not that hard. Instead, you have this thing that it pisses me off, the fact that we have to talk about this in 2023, right? We have been repeating this since 2015, just talking about this shit, and it's worse and worse and worse. And the fact that we have to talk about it is pissing me off more than it's actually happening, right? When does it stop?
The thing is, like, I feel like Swiss is perfect for going from 16 teams to 8 teams, and that is what it should be used for. But when you go this like step between where you have like, oh, these 4 teams go here and 2 teams go here, that is where it becomes kind of pointless almost. It doesn't really help. And also with the last chance qualifier teams, everything like that.
Could we solve this by just abolishing the legend system?
I mean, I would like that for sure.
I hate it. Honestly, like, just make the major qualifiers a qualifier for the major. And then when you get to the major, maybe you take a page out of Dota and you literally have a group stage where you play through and use that group stage for seeding, potentially. And then you do a double elim bracket from that point on.
I mean, there's so many options. There are options. That's the point. The options are there. You just need smarter people. Or people who actually care. Probably they have smart people, but I don't think they are very in tune of what is the best thing to do. But overall, I don't know if I think the Swiss is on Valve, right? It's not on Blast, because I think they're pushing for it.
No, that is Swiss is standardized at the moment,
Yeah, but it's also like Valve has proven to be quite open to ideas, I feel like, from what we've seen, like something like expanding the Asian RMR, for example, even though it technically wasn't needed, they were down to do that. So I think if someone...
they can message me on Twitter, I'll tell them what system they should use on the next one. I'm available.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do believe that the whole kind of like skipping rounds is just, I think it's, especially now that we've kind of gotten to a point where we do actually consider the whole thing a major rather than just the latter part, because we've kind of moved away from the whole like that it's separated from like the qualifier. essentially what used to be called the offline qualifier, main qualifier, whatever, that even took place maybe a month before the actual major in the first however many majors happened before it actually was tied to each other. I think that is just somewhat outdated, especially in this competition where we just have a lot more teams that are competitive. All those 24 teams that are at the major now, like they will be dangerous to some level. Like it used to be way back at majors, where you had some groups where it was obvious, like team like a flip side was just not going to make it past the groups. Like it was just unthinkable at that point. You just knew that there were like maybe 5-6 teams that were 100% going to make it. Maybe the last couple of spots were going to be kind of contested, but like a lot of those matches would have been just like absolute blowouts. That's no longer the case. Like obviously the competition has closened up a lot since those times, and so I understand that having a 2014 major makes a lot more sense in terms of we just have more competitive teams now, so we can just expand it a little bit and not have it in a way where 8 teams just get a free pass and just get a skip at the competition, especially with the system being as flawed as it is, and those 8 teams not necessarily being the most deserving of skipping an entire major stage, where people have to play 5 fucking rounds while one team just wins an extra best of 3 in the qualifier and just skip those entire 5 rounds. It's kind of crazy that
it's funny.
That's the thing.
It's funny. It's like the challenger stage could be more difficult than the legend stage. Like legit. Like it could almost happen. It feels like maybe obviously they have the Asian team there, but like it's weird. Even if it's like on a similar level of competition, it shouldn't be like that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But I guess you're in your spot. I think just lastly, I think I want to just reiterate what kassad said about the best of ones. For me, I like best of ones, but if we're using them, they need to be used kind of consistently. In a way, the way we're using right now, where you can play 2 best of ones, and then you need to play a best of 3, and then it's like, oh, this team is good in best of ones, but not in best of 3s. But now you meet different teams are going to meet the same team in a best of 1 and in the best of 3. The bait situation is the best example. On Ancient, they won 2 best of ones. They're in the 2-0, but now when they're playing the best of 3 games against Fnatic, well, it's a different game, right? They need to have a bigger map pool. They're also like more known to other teams, and then everything kind of the whole people that complain about the seeding being bad or fluke upset runs. Like this is kind of how it happens. Like they won the games that they were better in, but the format did help them in a way in being inconsistent. So I think also just moving to more best of consistently full best of 3s would make
they were close to qualify though. They were close to qualify.
Yeah, they were like a few
multiple
rounds,
times,
right?
even against Apeks.
Really
but the thing is, just to add to the comment that guy made that we just had it on the screen, is like about the technical difficulties, especially in Asia. That is all BLAST, 100%. Like I was thinking, like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't think so. Would it be cheaper for you to get those 8 teams in Europe, because you have already the experienced people, the whole infrastructure, everything that can be set up for those practice rooms, whatever, the full setup? Would that be cheaper than to organizing everything in Mongolia? You still have to pay for all the flights. Maybe you get a little bit of a discount because it's a shorter flight or whatever. But and set up the whole thing, set up the whole tournament, hire all these people probably from there to do this job on RMR and actually overwork them. And instead of like sending them all to Europe and actually play the Asian RMR from there. I understand for the Americas, because it's 16 teams, it would be, economically speaking, it would be financially like a little bit more expensive, but also doing it in Monterrey without any like experience prior to that is just the result why we got the technical issues. Yeah, that's the answer for the viewer that asked that question.
Right, for sure. Like people have been, it's a weird response to everything that's happening. Like people are like, almost certain people say like BLAST almost has no responsibility based on the comments. It's like that it can be true. Like this is your event, like your name.
I mean, they chose who was going to run those events. Yeah. Like that's ultimately their responsibility.
There are some problems in terms of like shipping the noise canceling thing from Europe to America. Shit happens, right? That is a thing that happens. But you also have to be able to adapt and still live up to the like.
When did they send them? Did they send them 3 months before, or they send them a week before?
That's the question.
Who is responsible for that? I'm always asking that guy. I'm sitting with this guy on a meeting after we do the post event, debrief, brief, whatever you want to call it, and ask him, when did you send it? And he said, I did it like on time. I did it like 7 days before. That's not good enough. Fired. That's it. That's how you do it. Like, you have to have people responsible for that. Like the guy on the top who is responsible for all these people, for distribution of the equipment, for organizing all the logistics, everything that's going on. That guy's responsibility is for that to get there. I don't care if shit happens. We are paying thousands of dollars for that shit not to happen, right? We are investing this money. The sponsors are paying. Whatever the fuck is happening there, you are responsible. Carry it over the fucking Atlantic yourself. I don't fucking care. Just get there in time. That's all I need to know. And of course they fucked up. And also like the issues with like Letney from Tyloo, all the fist bump thing. Like okay, like where is the admin?
I mean,
what's
that's
he doing?
Like, it's definitely, that is one of the things that people also made fun of. Obviously, there was a big article from Note with a lot of the issues kind of lined out, and people are making fun of it. Like, yeah, I personally think it's a stupid rule, and I think we all think it's a stupid rule.
Yeah.
But if it's a rule and it's being enforced in the European RMR and all of the majors previous, and it's going to be enforced at the major, then it has to be enforced here. Like, what is happening? Like, how is this inconsistent?
Where is the admin? Wasn't there an admin at the fucking booth?
I mean, it's honestly it seemed even like from the Asia and America's perspective, like they just did. I don't think they even were aware that some of these standards were in place, to be honest. Like, because some of them were just not upheld whatsoever, and then like some very obvious issues that, if a guy from Blast who's actually aware and read the major rulebook and he would have just checked everything that's happened, he would see like 5 different issues immediately, like what happened, during the tournament. So I feel like they just did not. I don't think that there was like good enough communication from Blast to the organizers, or the organizers were just too bad to
you send to Mongolia, to Monterrey, to wherever the fuck. You send them like assistant direct commissioner, fucking whatever that title is. And he oversees that.
I think there was somebody like that on both spots.
At least in the in Monterrey, there was the commissioner, the main commissioner of Blast was there. So I guess what do you think about that? I guess
fired.
That's I mean the Asian one is definitely the worst because there were issues with like 60-second timeouts instead of 30 seconds. I don't know how that happens. Like, you literally load the config. What's happening here?
Apparently you don't.
And also
what I think?
The time after the round was wrong. Like, that's obviously they just loaded like whatever they did before at events that they run, and they didn't actually use the major stuff. And then that's crazy. That's like, we've never had stuff like this happen at an RMR. And obviously,
well, I mean, there was a lot of inconsistencies, but it was more because that there were no standards created in the first place, rather than that they weren't upheld. Like, there was just no sort of like set of standards that were going to be upheld format wise or config wise a lot of the time, some of the time at least in some certain situations.
We have this rule book, it was obviously also different because all of the previous RMRs was just held in one spot, all of the teams there, and it was easier in terms of, I don't know, for PGL, the PGL RMR that I was working, actually, it was 2 weeks, started with Americas, Asia, and then 2 weeks of 2 European ones, and it was pretty straightforward, right? You kind of get used to how things work and things are smooth. Some people were there was this sentiment in the community that the RMR should be in their respective regions. I never really understood this. I don't think it makes that much of a difference in terms of so Liquid is playing as Monterrey, and that's now magically going to help, like, I don't know, party astronauts become better. Like, it doesn't matter. They're not going to be playing. They're not going to be practicing against them. Nothing's going to happen for their like 4 days there. So I think what needs to be prioritized is just the event working and being as smooth as possible.
The thing is, like, even that 60-second timeouts, okay, the config was wrong. Somebody didn't check the config before the night before it starts, right?
Fired.
Fired. No, the thing is, like, okay, I can see that, like, but before the game, even if the first time it happens, right? You are the admin. I'm the admin, for example, right? And I'm behind the team, and the timeout is called, and I stand up and I look what's happening, like who is communicating with what. Is the countdown good? That's my job, literally. Like, to oversee what's going on in this like little circle of 6 people on the server, right? And if the first timeout goes over 35 seconds and it goes to 60 seconds, I stop the game. A technical issue, okay, let's fix it manually. If you cannot fix it like early on automatically, manually, we're gonna have manual timeouts for 30 seconds until the game is over. Also, the other thing, they are playing till 2:40 in like AM. Some games for up to 2:40. I think Blad tweeted about that. Listen, okay, I understand the player association right now is like in shambles, whatever. I'm not gonna bash them right now because they have their own issues. But the thing is, like, we need to have like a proper association that will, you know, monitor these things. How are you allowed like to have like teams playing at 3 a.m.? I mean, we were playing at Berlin or somewhere, maybe in Katowice. I can't remember this time, but we were playing at 1 a.m. against NIP in a best of one in the legend stage. Like that's, luckily we won, whatever. But the thing is, like, you can't allow that to happen. Like, that's not normal. That's not something that player should be, you know, instead of that, the orgs are fighting not to fucking ask questions. And fucking, like, instead of, like, going for that, like, listen, can you not allow my players, my team won't be playing at 2:40? Like, this is not good for anything. This is not good for the game, for the team, for us who are paying that money to the players.
That was a 6-hour best of 3, by the way. Just so
I
you know.
know. I remember
So that's why it happened. Like,
and Gaze was like nursing a fever at the same time and just like having to sit through that the entire time, man. Like that must have been really fucking rough for some of these guys.
Yeah,
that should not be allowed. Just stop it. Like, you know, stop it immediately. The game after midnight should not be a thing. Like, I understand if it starts at 11:30, whatever, you have to do it. Like, just sometimes you have to, but if you see it's going to go to 3 a.m., you just postpone it till tomorrow. It is all it is. Like, we had technical issue. We have to postpone it till tomorrow rather than you playing at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
like,
but
nobody can perform at 3 a.m.
What would then happen is, like, Rare Atom would play 3 best of 3s on the same day because it was the last day that was happening. So, like, it's kind of pick your poison.
Well, I mean, the ideal...
Extend it for another day. Pay the fucking thing, because you fucked up. Pay for it. Take responsibility. Pay for the fuck up. Extend it for 1 day. Whatever the fuck it takes. Just make the players and the game make comfortable for the viewers, for the players, for the teams, for the orgs that are paying that much money, and for the fucking sponsors. That's it. Like, simple as that. If you made a mistake, you need to pay for it. Like, you cannot say like either you play 3 best of 3s or you play till 5 a.m. Well, fuck you. That's my answer is to that one. Just don't do it. Just take some responsibility. That's all.
And that, what did you want to add?
No, it's really what kassad ended up saying there at the end. It's just like, you can't have players playing into the early morning, and then obviously like having them scheduled for either early game the day after as well. Again, like that's gonna mess with their entire, well, not just entire day, but potentially entire tournament and potential major qualification as well, which is obviously the biggest thing that they can fight for. So yeah, I feel like there needs to be like a hard cutoff time. Obviously, there is this obviously PA thing where it's like, yeah, you're not meant to start games after yada yada, like this time, this amount of time, etc. That isn't followed at all in most cases. It feels like, at the very least, not in the online eras.
That's only followed like in terms of like how you schedule the games, but not how they actually end up, you know, through technical issues or whatever like that.
Yeah, but it feels like it has to get to a certain point where there is someone in charge at the various, you know, locations, whether it is in Monterrey or in Mongolia or Copenhagen for that matter. Like, if a game is having so many technical issues and delays that, let's say, yeah, you're starting the best of 3 after midnight, then I think somebody in charge needs to be like, well, we can't do this. Like, this is just not right. So we need to postpone it for the next day again. And like kassad said, yes, it's going to incur extra costs because you're going to have to extend the venue. You're going to have to extend certain hotels and flights and all of it. Like, you have to change a lot. It's a logistical nightmare, but
it wouldn't happen if they didn't fuck up multiple times. Yeah, because like that's the thing. Like, there's enough breathing space in a tournament in the tournament days to like accommodate for something. But the first day was also completely fucked. They played like
one match, one best
33 rounds on the first day. So NA RMR also got like only played like half of the first day. No headsets that we saw, but there wasn't even a solution to actually have things work properly. Like, I understand maybe you don't have your ideal noise canceling headsets, but like coaches weren't even able to talk properly. There were so many crazy issues. Like, I'm
you know what's funny for me, that like what happened like the day before when they were preparing the whole thing? Like, did they think that the headsets are gonna magically appear in the morning? Like, okay, maybe if we go to sleep and we pray, like tomorrow when we wake up on the PCs, there will be fucking headsets. Like, surely when you arrive there, you see there is no headsets for players, right? It's like, okay, what can we do? Head over to fucking LA, take a flight, buy a bunch of headsets, get down, and that's it. Like, it whatever, right? You just find a solution, do something, right? You're just pretending, oh, there is no headsets. Like, okay, never mind, we're just gonna delay the event. Well, Fired.
This reminds me of what's it called? Fucking Gaming Paradise, when they got to the event and there was no graphics cards in the PCs.
Yeah.
So then, or it was monitors or something, I don't know. And then someone like the day before was driving to like Netherlands to pick up some like used graphics cards and bringing them back. Like
2004. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
All these millions, dude. All these millions, like coming,
The $1 billion
flying.
industry.
We have the tournament directors, the commissioners, the fucking grandiose like appearances, and like we don't have headsets on the fucking booth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's definitely how it felt, like fucking the decade-old tournament, you know, like when there was just not enough people to run shit. Like one guy is solving like has five different rules in a tournament, and like broadcast has like problems. You can barely hear the casters, and like it's super yellow. I don't know what the fuck was going on with the Americas broadcast, man. Like it was so unwatchable at points, even like way deeper into the tournament. Asia,
It's the Mexico filter from movies. Everything's yellow.
I actually do have to commend Asia for like fixing at least the broadcast for after the second day. I want to say, I think for the last 2 days, the broadcast was actually at a really good level quality wise. Like they had some audio issues in the first day or whatever, and like some problems with I think some of the cameras, but they actually fixed that in the last 2 days. They had no fucking communication between the broadcast and what was actually happening on the server, but at least the broadcast quality was okay. I'll give them that.
Okay, I'll just say, because like 45 minutes ago or something, before like 7 kassad rants, people are saying that I don't care about time zones. I will admit that one of the benefits of having split RMRs is time zones, so like people from each region can watch in their own time zone. At the same time, like
it's like a few thousand people at some points, man. Like it's really low.
I was watching Liquid Nouns last night, and there was like 20k like on all of the numbers that we have. Obviously, Gaules was streaming, so there was a bunch of people, like 100k for him on the Furia game. But I understand that's an argument. It's an argument.
The thing is, like, with the Asian
also,
RMR, like, what would be wrong if they actually called up Minzik? Hey, listen, can you hook us up with few people in South Korea? Because when he organized the RMR in Seoul, right, back in 2018.
And the PGL one, yeah.
The PGL? Was it the PGL?
Yeah, that was PGL in South Korea, wasn't it?
No, that wasn't the Renner. That was in China. We played in Seoul, I think, where we beat...
It was like the
Nef
Kaspa thing, right? Or something.
Yeah. It was in some sort of cafe with like a studio. It was a pretty good thing. And the experience whole in Seoul is great. Like South Korea is unbelievable.
Yeah, but I think it's maybe a bit more expensive than Mongolia.
Oh yeah, that's where we get to the point, right? Like they are cutting costs. That's something that we discussed in the like.
But aren't all the fucking player costs covered by Valve even for the RMRs though? At least in terms of like the biggest part. I would imagine.
Listen, I'll share a little secret, I think, but I think it's a secret actually. Initially, Blast was sending out emails that they're playing for 5 people only.
Oh yeah,
team members.
This has been publicized. This is not secret anymore.
And then there were like crazy like Twitter drama and whatever, right? So they extended. Blast was paying for the 6th member, which is fine. Good for them. But like, let's say, like I said, organize it in South Korea. I'm not saying Mongolia is bad or anything like that. It's just they have a bunch of unexperienced people, first event there. Like it's very difficult, right? But South Korea, Minzik, he can hook you up with a few people, talk to him, pay him for fuck's sake to organize this thing for you or to actually set it up. Because he has like 20 years of experience in that. And just make it good. Honestly, I do hope that they're just saving money to put everything they have into Paris Major. It's just, that's my only like reasonable, like I'm trying to reason all of this. And obviously the economy in recession and all these things that are happening, whatever, you can cut costs a little bit, but I'm hoping they're investing all of their money into the last CSGO major in Paris.
Just wait, Kassad, because the grand finals is going to be played inside the Louvre. Okay. That's what all the money's going for.
Okay. Perfect.
And the trophy is actually the Mona Lisa, the real one.
Yeah.
Fired.
The Mona Lisa comes in sticker form now, so you can put it on a gun.
Did we miss anything? I think we're like halfway through the show. We didn't talk about almost any CS yet, so maybe there were a couple more opinions. There was one amazing one. Can you bring the last one? I'll click the thing. This one is amazing. I just love this, even though it's moving forward. Group E is fully stacked, and it will be a bloodbath over there. I don't see Nip in the major as long as Hetrick is their opper. He is definitely not ready. Nip female has Astra, who is 10 times better than him. If they replace him with Astra, maybe they'll make it. And there's even a reply, and he says, this is not some like supporting women things, I actually think she is much better. So it was amazing tweet here from Zealot Vedant. He is no chill right there.
Yeah, he's definitely not happy with that trick.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't think.
He doesn't approve.
He doesn't think. But I looked up Astra, and she's like has great rating in ESL Impact. So maybe she is actually better. Who knows? Have any of you watched her play?
Nope, I don't think so.
So
Not
you can't
for
actually
like the last year.
Yeah. Let's move to the main discussion of, let me see where my thing is. I'm not used to clicking anything here. Result breakdown. We talked about the integrity issues, about the format. Let's talk about the results. Virtus Pro eliminated FaZe and Last Chance Qualifier.
Can we start with the fucking VP thing? I know we've already kind of talked through it.
Yeah, go Striker.
I mean, like, what the fuck are you doing is my question. Like, how, like, what thinking? I know kassad is not going to be able to say anything here. It's just so fucked at this point. But I also talked to some people and heard some things, but I don't think it's particularly that shocking compared to what we heard. So I think was fairly even pretty much what we heard from like the official sources. So it's kind of, I'm just wondering what you might have heard otherwise. But anyway, like, what kind of craziness leads you to believe that this is a good move to make? You literally are 1-2. You haven't played with the guy for 4 months. Clearly, kyron is doing okay, even if, okay, whatever you think, if there's some pressure involved or whatever it is, maybe he fucked up a couple of rounds late in those previous couple of games, you know? People just make some of these mistakes in pressure situations, you know? And it's not like Norbert is some like god that's never gonna crumble on any sort of pressure at a point where he's coming back after 4 months after his last official. Obviously, he wasn't good enough to be in the team in the first place. That's why they replaced him. So, like, what is this? Like, is he suddenly this fucking all-powerful savior that's going to come and save you from elimination?
Striker,
I mean, that's crazy.
Did you forget? He was benched so he could focus on his individual skill, right? She's had 4 months of powering up just for this moment. That's what they were all banking on.
It's almost like he's some like Olofmeister, you know, sitting on the bench. So they're bringing him in, you know, won 7 majors, MVP, #1 player in the FAST. So he's like, oh, he's gonna magically fix everything. I really just want to know what the fuck, essentially. Like, I don't understand. I really don't understand what kind of madness leads you to believe that's a good move to make.
I don't think there is like a way you can like angle it to where it makes sense at all. Like in my head, like I've been hearing kassad firing about 16 people so far on this broadcast from various, you know, companies. I feel like he needs to get his fired, you know, voice line out yet again, because
the question is, who do we fire first?
Well, yeah, well that's fair. I mean, we could take turns discussing that, but from what I understood, it was a management decision, right?
It was or wasn't?
It was, as far as we can tell, yeah.
Yes, from what we know of the little public information there is. And like already there, again, I've been, I've limited team experience, etc. Like that, but I've been around enough players and teams over the last 20 years to know that there's very, very few people in management positions who are qualified enough to make a performance-based decision. Very, very, very few. And I don't think like even amongst all the top teams that they have, you know, the right people necessarily in positions to make those kind of calls, which is why it's even more crazy to me that they like this seems like a decision based on, well, with Norbert in the lineup, we won Rio. Therefore, if he comes back into the lineup, we're definitely making the next major.
That is
like, that's the kind of logic we're working.
That is strong analysis right there, man.
Yeah, that right, and like that's so ridiculous to believe, especially when he's been out, he's been inactive for 4 months, and again, like the team is not necessarily playing well. You're also throwing away like so much of the preparation that you've done leading up to the event. Yes, VP weren't playing fantastically by any means. Obviously to be in a position to potentially be eliminated that early, but you're not helping anyone, like not the 4 existing players who remain, not kyron for, you know, looking into the future, like how his confidence is going to be, and you're not putting Norbert in a good position to perform either. So it's just like it makes no sense whatsoever. And
no, I said it on Twitter, like I felt bad for literally everybody, including VP, outside of whoever actually made that decision, you know, because it's fucking insane. Like everybody lost. Like everybody lost, literally. Like nobody.
It's a rare all L.
Okay, Mao's won, I suppose, because they just played a team that wasn't ready to play, but everybody else lost.
It's also like, why this? Well, I feel like it's an overreaction. Like they lost.
That's an understatement, man.
Ones. They lost 2 best of ones. 1 to Bait 16-14. 2 into the Breach 16-13. Yes, these are teams that on paper you should beat. In the end, like Into the Breach qualified, they beat some good teams. They played good against Navi. It's not like I don't know. It almost feels like they were losing to, you know, open qualifiers to like the 4 of us here. Like what the
or
fuck?
EG.
So Imperials should disband as well.
The thing is, like, obviously, I just found out what happened. I'm fairly sure that's 100% true, right? And the things I can't really elaborate without like revealing things, but it is a shame that we don't have the major champ playing the major, right?
For sure, yeah.
Like that's something that kind of sucks to see. Like it doesn't really matter, like if their style is garbage and whatever, like people talk about them. I don't really care about that stuff, right? Because they have the game they play. They found a good system for them to win. They played it. They won. Whatever, right? That's nothing. That's fair and square, right? But them not playing the major actually sucks. You know, not being there to defend their title, something that I don't think it should happen on any event. You know, any sport, right? If you have it in a World Cup, like you win the World Cup in football, you should be automatically qualified. You win the CSGO major, you should be automatically qualified for the next one. This is the way it should be, right? In my opinion. But overall, was it a mistake? We saw that it was. You know, like I said, I can't really elaborate too much without, you know.
This is annoying, man.
Yeah.
Such a cock piece. It's insane.
What do you guys think? What was actually the issue? Like when you were watching the first two games that they lost, the best ones, did you see anything that was worrying, concerning, or like even VP in the last month or so? Like that would be like, oh my god, they suck.
I mean, for me, it was more of a collective collapse in so many ways, because outside of Flit, nobody performed. And again, that is a bit of a cop-out to say, like, yeah, no, they didn't hit their shots, etc. But if you look at the Rio performances, obviously that is a big surprise. But you can also go easily back to that and say Fame overperformed massively. Norbert did overperform as well. Like they played the best Counter-Strike that they've ever done at the right time. But you can't expect that to be the norm. So I think like the expectations for this VP lineup as well were off. And obviously not so off that you should expect them to be eliminated in the fashion that they were, but they weren't by no means, or they shouldn't by any means have been like a safe pick for qualifying in my eyes, because they overperformed massively to get their biggest trophy, and obviously that's a great thing to have, but that's not going to be, you know, the consistent thing that you can look to when assessing the team. So when you don't have James actually performing, which is a bit of a rarity, but when he can't be Mr. Reliable in clutches and actually bailing out, which has led you to win so many of these games, 16-14 and so on, you're kind of screwed. And I think like they will have to make roster changes. Well, obviously now CS2 is coming, so we'll see if they make anything before that or not. But it feels like there has been at least a couple of players who should be on the chopping blocks, and they should have been even before Rio started.
Yeah. But I think you can still point to James and why he hasn't really felt up to par. Like even in those games they lost to Cloud9 and Ents was the other team. Cloud9 and somebody else, I can't remember, at DPL. Like he also disappeared. Like that's very rare for James, you know, to just like completely disappear in games and just not have his, like obviously, you know, he will usually have good stats just through the playstyle that he has. Like he'll just not die a lot. Like that's how you kind of help inflate your stats if you just save as much as you do, right? But he even like died really a lot compared to what he normally does.
I saw him entering a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, even at this tournament, right? Like there was that ancient position, like where he was in cave and like trying to entry with an up and shit like that. Like fairly uncommon for James to do. I don't know. This whole situation feels to me like they were completely desperate for some reason. They just got like pushed into a corner and made a decision that like just wasn't really based on solid logic, and they were like, we're struggling but we don't know why, so we're going to change something. Like that's how it feels to me. That like, but like it's so unprecedented that I feel like nobody will be driven this far to like insanity that they will do something like this just in the middle of the tournament, just like one series away from elimination. After a couple of games that you possibly threw away, there was a couple of mistakes. If you threw them away, okay, just like address whatever you happened, why you threw them away, and just head into the next game and make sure that doesn't happen again, right? But yeah. I can't fucking try even and justify this. I have no idea.
I was about to ask, off of memory, I can't recall this happening for the substitution of a player. Basically, yeah, I guess mid group stage, if you want to call it that, or mid Swiss. If it hasn't been for medical reasons.
I don't remember anything like this happening.
Yeah, I don't.
Or performance, only in situations there was 6-man roster or something that, where they swapping for maps.
Yeah, but that would be map specific, right? So it's already predetermined.
Yeah, and these players it was already known that this was going to happen. It wasn't a surprise, and it wasn't based on, oh, we sucked, so now we're going to remove a player and swap in a new player. Someone watched too many football documentaries or something.
Right, 89 minutes.
All right, so FaZe, right?
Let's before we go into FaZe, we need to do a break. We need to do a break for an ads for 1 minute or something, and then we're gonna come back. So Lucas, roll that, and then we're gonna go into FaZe.
It's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, it's a good vibe, good vibe.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
Okay, we're back. FaZe, kassad. FaZe they're grasping onto a chance to get to the major. They just won the Grand Slam. They're on HLTV, second best team in the world. They won one of the previous two majors. They're in the last year and a half. They're the number one team. Obviously, how the fuck has this happened? Why is this happening? Why are FaZe struggling?
Listen, I was watching all the games from FaZe, all 5 games. They played every single map, from OG to Apeks, Navi, Bad News, Eagles, and finally Mouse. The thing is, what I saw in the first couple of games against OG individually, they were looking okay, just enough to win. Tactically, structurally, they were looking like an average team, right? Coming into this Navi game in the first line, the first best of 3, they lost 2-0, where NPL was just playing great and stuff. If you look at the Inferno, just download Inferno and just look at their T side, and you can see the initial and the biggest problem of their game, on that map whatsoever. The T side, they are going into so many gun rounds, but just buying weapon plus Kevlar without utility. The flashes are the little flashes they have, they're using it incorrectly. They get into a position where they have maybe 1 flash or 0 flashes to get into the site. It doesn't really matter if it's B or A. So if you try to get into the site, let's say against Navi on Inferno, where Electronic and Bit is waiting for you, for example, right? There is absolutely, whoever you are, like today, Zaivu, Simple, Nico, whoever you are, you cannot enter the site easily because those players will shoot you down if you don't have a proper utility to take over the site. The reactions from Kerrigan and Robin or whatever, whoever is running the T sides and the timeouts, and I don't know what kind of dynamic they have there, it's pretty poor. On those T sides, when this happens, listen, these guys are not fighting for bracket. Maybe we don't have to use. I'm calling a timeout. Let's say the situation is Navi against FaZe. I'm calling a timeout for FaZe. I'm saying this in the middle of the map. Listen, guys, they're not playing aggressively in bracket. We don't need to use 15 flashes to take bracket. We can use only 1 with a molly and a smoke for arch, right? Something like that. That way we have 3 or 4 more flashes left to enter the site, so we can flash the site, we can flash the pit, we can flash the small pit or whatever the fuck is the current meta when it comes to the flashes in the site. So that's how we enter the site. On the B side, they're playing semi-passive, they're playing retake. We don't need to use 15 mollies to get top banana. We don't need to use 14 flashes to get top banana. We can save 2 or 3. When we enter the site, we can clean them up and use our individual skill to trade that 2 for 2 or 2 for 3, because in clutch situations, they can win any 2v3 on any site, on any map. This is the advice number 1 for them. Look at your T side and look at what you did with your utility. The second thing is like, individually, they didn't have a plan B, right? When you have these players and this team like this, where the shots are not connecting and you don't have a plan B, you are always going to lose. It's so difficult to deal with this, like these young kids right now, they're sharp. You cannot just walk in to shoot somebody in the head. Like, you need to have like a proper system to get into this, especially in this, like I said, try to get into the site. Even like, look at the game against BNE. They were up 14-12. BNE locked that shit down easily in the last 4 rounds. The calls were like everywhere. Like, obviously, BNE just played better. Like, and they played better even in Rio. Like, it looked like there is no plan. There is no plan B when it comes to these things. Like I said, timeouts have not been used properly. You know, and this is not me advocating for fucking coach job. Let's be clear about this. But the thing is, like, this is my analysis of what I saw in those games.
I mean that's like, the pause thing is nothing new for FaZe, I feel like. But yeah, this is Striker go.
No, I literally wanted to say the exact same thing, that we're in FaZe, like at Rio, the team that, or whatever it was, like around Rio, they were the team that took by far the least timeouts
and had
out of every team.
Had the worst, like, all of the stats that were people are trying to figure out, like, after timeout, if how many rounds do you win, what's the percentage and stuff like that, they are like very low in that as well. So that's obviously not a strength of theirs right now. What do you think, Ven?
I mean, to me, more so than necessarily being worried about their key sides and necessarily what a timeout can do in terms of like figuring out an opponent, I think their key sides in terms of, okay, it might not have been played as beautifully and as perfectly as you would have liked, and they did get bailed out on multiple occasions by individuals clutching rounds that actually gives them a way in. I was kind of more disappointed by their CT sides. And I also have, again, I've obviously been wrong because they've won a Grand Slam, they've won a major and so on, but I've never been a mega fan of the combination of Brokey and Rops in FaZe, because I feel like that's probably the 2 most passive players you'll find on God's green earth together with Jame, which does put a lot of pressure on 3 players to constantly be able to do stuff for you. Otherwise, you're relying heavily on clutching. And to be fair, in fairness to both Rops and Brokey, they have some ridiculous clutch numbers as well. So, you know, it's worked out in that sense, but I don't think that's like a reliable way to build your team around it. Again, I think there's at certain times a little bit too one-dimensional from FaZe and how they approach the game and how rigid they are in terms of how they set up their rounds. But again, it's hard to fault them given the success that they've had as well, leading up to this point. And again, if you look at the map that kind of did them in this RMR was Inferno more so than anything else, and that was a map that they pretty much were beating everyone on, even, you know, as late as Pro League. So they come into the RMR obviously brimming with confidence because, yeah, they've been, you know, unbeatable on that map, and then everything just kind of slowly collapses on the map. And I think it's hard to make the adjustments and kind of pinpoint what exactly is going wrong with a map that you've had so much confidence in a short amount of time. So I guess we could see a pretty significant difference in FaZe just by the week that they're going to be able to get now leading into the LCQ.
Yeah. I mean, people in chat this is the classic Brokey being passive. Half the people are like, oh, this isn't true. But like in terms of opening duels, it depends how you define passive, right? People are going to be like, if you just sit in a corner. When you look at how he plays and Jane plays, if you look at late rounds, it kind of feels different, right? But the early rounds, Brokey's not going for a lot of openings. He is literally has the least openings, less than Rops even in the team at the event. I think the difference at EPL was Rops was a bit more aggressive and making more plays than he did here. And to be honest, like FaZe did say that the Grand Slam was their number 1 priority. And these things do matter, right? If they put all of their focus on getting that, they're not going to be like fully super prepared for the RMR. Not that they're not preparing. You can't be 100% at every event, every consecutive event. And maybe they just felt like they could get through easier than they did, because the group also didn't look that difficult on paper. And in the end, they get Na'Vi in the 3rd game, and then things become pretty much complicated.
Yeah. I do think that on CT side, drops has actually changed quite a lot in the past, let's say, couple of months, because at some point I was also really critical of that, because like literally at some points you would have just 3 guys making any sort of moves, and like you would always have 2 people just staying in the back, right, and not really doing anything. And a lot of the time it just felt like his potential was just not utilized. Like drops is such a skilled player that he should be involved in more action and not just reserved to clutch situations and flanks. And like even in those clutches, a lot of the time I felt like Rops was just playing all of them exactly the same way, that he would just wait out people, and if they didn't show, he would just not win the clutches because he's just not taking advantage of mistakes, right? Like if they literally just sit on their ass, usually he doesn't win them. Like that was a for a long time was a thing, but in the past couple of months and at EPLs especially, you could tell that on CT especially he was getting more and more aggressive, like apartments on Inferno, you know, some of these pushes that he was doing like that. You wouldn't see Robs doing that a lot in previous times, and I think his stats on CT side are actually still quite high, but it's more the T sides where like all the like aggression rests basically on Kerrigan and Rain, and occasionally twists when he's in the right positions. So I feel like that's where the difference is still doesn't really show, at least. So I don't know. I feel like the CT sides maybe in terms of that, I didn't see that as the same problem that I always saw with FaZe, honestly.
Yeah, no. My issue is necessarily like passiveness on CT side. Passiveness in regards to T sides predominantly, and when it comes to CT sides, it's very slow rotations.
Right.
Like they're kind of hedging their bets that whoever's on the opposite side of the map is going to be fine, or there's always going to be something to find on the opposite side of the map in terms of a lurk and that kind of stuff. And you'll see that a lot on Inferno. Just very, very delayed rotations, partly because they have been playing without information as well at times, which is given for any team. So you can't necessarily fully commit to it unless you've seen bomb, etc. Like it's hard to make that kind of call at a split notice, but they've just seemed indecisive and not necessarily as confident in what they want to do on their CT sides, which is going to cause issues versus good teams.
Yes, no answer. Do you think they're going to make it through the last chance qualifier? So it's 6 teams, 1 makes it through.
Yes.
Isn't it hard to tell because we don't know who the other team?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot
Kind
of
of
that. It could be rough, man. Like,
I mean, if we can like make ourselves like look smart by saying yes and they qualify, or just.
But what
stupid,
what does your heart say? Like, what is it? What is your?
My heart say yes, because I don't think as bad as the T side were and all the issues that I had, I don't think they're that bad. I don't realize that. I think they're currently smart enough and good enough and experienced enough to realize, listen, guys, and I think they have a coach and an analyst too. They can review those demos and see exactly what I'm talking about. Like it doesn't happen only on Inferno, it happens to multiple maps. And it's just, they will look into this like, listen, we need to react better on how teams play. We cannot just keep forcing our game and hoping like it will work every single time, because it won't. You saw it against Navi. Like you need to adapt to certain things that are happening. And regarding Robs, like, for example, he doesn't update his CT sites all that much. If you just go down and download 10 close games of Inferno of either Mongolz or FaZe, and you will see the same moves from Robs towards the end, the last couple of rounds, in the 12, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, he will always go for a boiler push in the last few rounds. Always. It would be 8 or 9 out of 10. Just go there and download and let me know what you saw, because it's always the same. That tells me that, okay, he has a certain way of playing, but you have to adapt. You have to adapt to certain situations in order to win, right? Otherwise, you're just going to lose if you run into a team that's playing something that you don't really play good against.
Yeah, I'm going to say that I think I'm going to give it kind of a condition. As long as, let me see. As long as it's not Heroic, Cloud9, Vitality, or G2 in those deciding matches, I think FaZe will be through. Anybody else, I think they'll beat.
But I mean, the caveat here is that if any of those teams do end up in LCQ, they're not doing too hot themselves, right?
No,
and they have less time.
But we know that they can lose those matchups. I think none of the other teams, I think FaZe can realistically lose to in a series. Because obviously they've done worse, and they lost to BNE, which is a team that, like obviously they have the play style, and it seems like FaZe are struggling against these teams. Like we see it when they face off like against any sort of a team that play dynamic CT sides, or even like you look at G2 and the G2 matchup between them and FaZe. Like it's very clear that FaZe aren't super hot on playing this sort of style, you know. BNE are like kind of like that on steroids, and it's a bit different. Like they really push a lot more and are just way more aggressive in that sense. But it's just not something that seems to fit a FaZe very well, exactly because of the fact that like their aggression stands on those basically two guys, you know. And if those two guys aren't doing well in that, then they're going to get picked off by these aggressive plays. It's just they're just going to keep playing at disadvantages all the time, you know. And so I think that's like partly an issue why FaZe are struggling with these matchups sometimes. But yeah, I think as long as it's not one of those big dogs, I think FaZe are going to be fine.
There was someone actually brought this up in chat. It's interesting, the whole Navi game with the Vertigo third map decider that we didn't see. What did you guys make of that? Is this like, are they cursed? Like the same thing happened against BNE, right? They let it through, they played it, they lost, they got eliminated. Here they didn't play it and didn't really make any difference. But they still ended up being in a shit position. So
I mean, but Navi, so are Navi, man. Like we don't know if Navi actually like are okay or not on Vertigo if they practiced it.
I mean, we don't know if FaZe are good on Vertigo or not either.
No, but we know,
like,
but we know what they practice it, so they have some
think
understanding of the map.
Listen, I don't think it's a curse. Like whoever believes in curses, he needs to search help.
Fine.
Like those are the same people who believe in ghosts. Like in curses, like whatever. Like the thing is, like
I just realized I fucked up your title, but it's search help, not seek help, right?
Yeah, search help. No, the thing is like, the thing is like, why would you even leave that fucking Vertigo in? Like, what are you stand to gain from that? You think the other teams are going to be, oh, they left it for Vertigo, we have to remove it next time? No, nobody will fucking believe that. Like,
but wasn't it FaZe who chose it?
It doesn't really matter who chose it. They left it. Like, it was like, why would you? What are you gaining with that? Like, it's just like, just remove it, get your map in case something bad happens in the first or the second, or you know, for them it happened in both maps. But the thing is, like, just leave your third option open so you can finish the qualifier earlier and get the fuck home and practice. Instead, they left Vertigo thinking they're some sort of
it was FaZe choosing it. So
yeah, it was between Anubis and Vertigo.
Yeah, in the Navi game, yeah.
It was between Anubis and Vertigo, and they banned Anubis. And
I would say, like in that scenario, if they've practiced it, then it's completely fair, given the fact that Navi have, you know, not been playing Vertigo at all. But I do think I would question whether or not, or why they would have bothered to try to get a 7 map pool when they're winning everything without it already. Or they're doing extremely well at it, obviously, winning Grand Slams.
Unnecessary is the word.
Yeah. Like, again, you're stretching yourself thin. Maybe that's why, you know, certain maps that have been strongholds for them in the past are falling off. Maybe that's why they're dropping Nuke to Mouse. Maybe that's why they're dropping Inferno to 3 different teams at the RMRs, etc., because they get less practice times on those maps because they have shoehorned Vertigo in, which I think if they would have done this a year and a half ago, then it would have made a whole lot more sense. Again, I don't think tier 1 teams are especially good on Vertigo in general, so that would have made a whole lot more sense. But you're already kind of like the undefeated champion of the world in that sense. You're holding the title belts at your face, so
yeah, I mean,
don't
like
be holding the plane tickets soon if they don't.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like something that they just wanted to stay ahead of the curve essentially, and just like make sure that they stay the best by, you know, being able to have the option at least. You know, like it's kind of crazy that they would have done it against a team like BNE, for example. You know, that actually plays the map. You know, I would have at least understood if they practiced
other teams though, like other teams and in their vicinity outside of Navi who has less experience than FaZe on that map, right? G2
I mean, they're not
played
going
it
to
forever
against Cloud9.
They're not going to play it Cloud9. They're not going to play it versus G2. They're not going to play it versus Heroic. Or they shouldn't, at least.
Vitality
right?
also.
Yeah, so it's just like, yeah, if you did this a year and a half ago, that would have made more sense. You could have eased it in more and more. But now we're seeing them kind of pull it out.
I feel like this is a fuck up similar to Liquid suddenly thinking they should play Nuke. I mean, they're okay on it, but at the same time, all of the top teams are better than them. So like, what doesn't make a lot of sense to me, essentially. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Lots of things don't make sense about this RMR.
I mean, like eventually, like they didn't play Vertigo, they didn't fuck it up, so that's not where they fucked it up, right? Like who knows how it would have gone? It would have been a fucking amazing game to watch. Like I was like, so I really wanted this NPL storyline because I think like a lot of people, and I mean me included, I wasn't entirely sure about the move, and I was just like waiting to see the actual potential because I think we never really got to see that early on when NPL was in the lineup. But I really wanted them to go through with him playing this well. I didn't want it to go to Vertigo, even though he's like the most experienced player on the map out of Navi. Like, still, I didn't want it to go there. I just wanted this story to stay as it is almost. And so I was kind of happy when they won the second map. But man, it would have been entertaining if we went to 3.
Yeah, let's move on to kind of a freestyle part. Let's just pick each of us like a kind of an impressive thing or impressive team, and a disappointing team. Obviously, talk about FaZe and Vertigo, so we're not going to talk about them. Let's start with you, vENdetta. Who impressed you? Maybe we can talk about a player that stood out specifically.
Yeah, are we starting in the EU? Just because I guess we can do rapid fire for Asia and the Americas, but no, impressive. Again, a little bit of a bias here, but I'd say Apeks. The pessimist in me was kind of expecting them to drop the ball versus bait, and then having been so close, etc., and not making it at the end. But very, very happy to see them qualify. I know for a fact that this is also a team that's very committed to staying in Counter-Strike as well, which I think is very cool, considering the circumstances in the world right now. And I'm also extremely, extremely happy for jakeM, because jakeM has been a top quality player for so long. And I think kassad can speak to this as well. Like, you'll deserve this so much. And he's been a tier 1 level, like a caliber player. Like, he has that individual level in him, and he's had it for longest of times, even when he wasn't playing tier 1. Like, even when Apeks was a much worse team than what they are now, and so on. So I was just really, really happy for them. That was a super positive surprise. And obviously, being Norwegian, for a Norwegian club to make a major, that's pretty fucking massive.
Listen, I love Yod. The thing is, like, I really like a brotherly love for Yod, and like him as a person, right? The thing is, like, he deserved this. I talked to him maybe 3 weeks ago, and he was like, I was giving him skins for the RMR to play, right? And we were like talking about it, like, about the RMR and stuff. So he said, like, he's missing the old days, like we were traveling and playing in like big events and like, playing high pressure matches and all this like tier 1 scene. He was missing all of it. We were just reminiscing about some situations from before and talking about his current team and like, how he feels and stuff. And he said, like, I don't know, like my contract is out at the end of the year. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do just everything that I want to do right now is qualify for the majors. So I'm so happy that he actually made it. And I was going to talk about the positive when it comes to Apeks, but since you did it, I can switch to BNE. Like, now a lot of like trolls are going to be talking into fucking chat about the politics stuff, and I don't care about it. You can go fuck off right now. The thing is, like, the way a BNE played, again, impressed, right? Again, impressed everyone. And these people, it's good for them right now that that they don't have an org for the RMR for the major, because they're going to get 5% of the money. Usually 50-50, 60-40 in terms of in favor of the org. But after this, if they actually, because they're legends, if they actually do something and they go into the, let's say, the champion stage, the playoffs or whatever, right? Surely there is an organization that picks them up, right? Surely
that's what we said last time. But that's what we said last time, man.
Some sort of fucking EG. Like, let's say you are EG, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars that you spent on these players who accomplished actually nothing. And if you went into this, like, I'm guaranteed you, those are all free agents. You offer them, listen, there's $10,000 signing bonus, $10,000 salary for you. Play for us for 1 year. And then we'll see how it goes. They qualify that. You get 3 times that money in stickers, in sponsors, in like all these things that are going to be playing. You are a sponsor team, you're a partner team. They get to play the pro league. They get to play the blast. They get to play everything, right? So why not? And now I don't know what's going to happen after we have the next major in CS2 in a year from now, whatever, right? But surely there is an organization that says, like, listen, these guys keep making money, And it's from the financial side, like, the 50% of that sticker money will go to the org, like if they had the org. Like, why the fuck wouldn't we make money? These guys are not that expensive. They're not going to come to you and ask for 30,000 euros. Like, I talked to Rigo. We flew back from Rio together. We were sitting next to each other in the plane. And we had like a normal chat, like, and he seemed very leveled guy. Like, he said they don't want anything crazy. They're not looking for some crazy numbers. They're not looking for 30,000 euros per month. They just,
but they're also not going to sign for like 5K and like 70% of sticker money, because that.
But if you pay 35,000 to Breeze and Cirque and who else, surely you can pay 50,000 to a whole team in for BNE, for example, right?
They just need to add another team.
People
EG
say
Red.
like this,
EG
yeah.
Red,
Yeah,
EG
EG,
Eagles.
yeah. The thing is like EG Eagles, yeah. The thing is like they can, have them play these events. People are saying, yeah, they're only the major team. They're only, yeah, let's see. Let's test them out.
I mean, only
Put them in the
major
partnerships,
team.
but let's test them out.
Only the major team is not that bad. I'd be
Yeah.
happy with only a major team. So
I mean,
Put
again,
let's
give
have
them
10
opportunities, right?
matchups. Let's have 10 matchups between BNE and EG. Black or the main team or whatever, right? Who wins those 10 matches? 10 out of 10.
I'll
10
give
now.
I'll give one to EG, man.
Yeah. I'll give them
Striker, who was your positive?
I mean, I already talked about NPL, which I think was a pretty big story. But I'm gonna say another one that's more player focused will be xertioN. I think he was the most impactful player of the RMR. I think he was amazing, especially in the roles that he plays, man. Like I was looking even through his stats after I saw that like parts of this FaZe series. He has like almost 40% opening attempts on T side, and he has those stats with that sort of fucking high variance role. It's crazy how many opening attempts he takes and how successful he is despite that, how impactful he can be. So I think, that FaZe series was just such a massive advertisement for xertioN, and like he just ascended in that match, and I hope he continues like this because it will make Mongolz like I really do think that they will make Mongolz a true powerhouse, because they needed like a third guy who would put up something like, or the second guy who would put up really big numbers, because you can't really rely on on Torgy especially. So you just need two really strong riflers to make for that, and I think xertioN from his position, somehow if he keeps this up, that's like really big up for that.
Yeah. I don't know. I do ask these questions, but I don't even think about what my answer would be. So that's great. I think for me, even though they didn't make it through yet, potentially, I really like debate. Like I really liked watching them play, and I always like these kind of scrappy underdog stories. All of the players except Wrinkle. Like Wrinkle has some buzz around him, right? People have been talking about him like an up and what?
Catching strays for no reason.
What happened with him? I'm not.
No, it's just everybody's doing great except Wrinkles. Is like
no, I mean,
In a
no one is
positive
really
way.
hyped.
No,
No one is hyped. No one is talking about Captain Kurtka going to Navi or any shit like that.
Wait, have you not read the forums? They're talking about Captain Kirk and Navi
Now
all
they
day.
are. Now they are. But like in the last 6 months, no one spoke about them. And I like how they play. Like, and maybe it's not super consistent against like tier 1 teams when they going to play a bit more, because I feel like they have this kind of, it's not a gimmick, but what they do on CT sides, they kind of like group up and then push something together. Like they do like mid crunches a lot on Ancient, and they win a lot off of that. Or on Ecos, they pull off some of these upsets doing some like weird kind of stack pushes stuff. But then when they were playing Fnatic, for example, I feel like Fnatic was just so ready for it. They were like, okay, these guys are just they're gonna do something weird. Let's just chill. And they won round just by literally sitting in spawn on Ancient and waiting for people to come at them. And they're doing that. I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Like their economy management was very weird. Like they would play last like 7-8 rounds of a game on 4 FAMAS and like 1 M4 consistently. So they're going into every aim duel like, yeah, absolutely disadvantaged. So then you have to kind of make a play to make it work. And I think they're forcing that a bit too much. Like I like what they do. They're very dynamic in that regard. And Wrinkle is, as an opper, also like he likes to go around all the time, which I think is pretty good. Like it doesn't seem like he's doing anything crazy, but he's just moving all the time. So I think there is something to it. I don't know if they can like ascend as a team, but I like what they're bringing. They're bringing like a style that's slightly different to what I'm used to seeing from, the 15 teams that we see at every ESL and BLAST event.
Fair.
Yeah.
Can I give one final shout out, because we didn't mention them at all, and they did qualify obviously and did really well for themselves. I want to give a shout out to CYPHER and Into the Breach obviously for qualifying as a whole. But I think that was in large part due to CYPHER as well. He was absolutely nuts. And speaking of players who are a little bit different, a little bit unique, and you mentioned xertioN, who had ridiculous stats and a very, very aggressive and forward role. CYPHER, same thing for Into the Breach.
Yeah, I think he's the only one who took more opening attempts than xertioN at the tournament, by the way. I think he actually hit the 40% mark, which is fucking insane, honestly. Like
that's not meant to happen.
That's like even beyond art level, of aggression. So
yeah, it's what they did was pretty respectable. Like they lost to Navi in the overtime game. They beat Sprout in very convincing. I was watching that game. It was just a one-way traffic all the way. And then they beat VP, which is, yes, they had that, whatever VP, but still a win is a win, right?
Yeah.
And then they beat, best of 3 bait. Obviously, people are going to say, yeah, the draw, the whatever, the seeding, but they did beat them. So they got 3, legit wins, and they had 1 overtime loss to Navi. So overall, respectable. I want to see them on the major, but we'll see what happens there. Usually those teams kind of fall off a little bit, but it's like the players that you would never expect to be there. Like, okay, Thomas has been on the scene for a while. He's been playing with Smooya. He's like,
he's an IGL now.
Yeah,
I would never expect that to happen.
Similar to Mez in Fnatic, right? Then you have Crucial, who is like on the scene for God knows
for like
how long.
10 years now. Yeah,
and
Isn't he
Ralen as
28
well.
years and a major?
I think he's only 26.
26.
Which is
Really?
crazy.
It feels
because
like he's
been around.
36, right?
Yeah.
And Ralen is 28. So it's like he's also not like a spring chicken, right? He's not like a super young talent, 28 years old, but he's on the major, the very last one for CSGO. So pretty good for them. I'm happy for them.
Yeah, likewise. Especially the Crucial angle. Like, he's been around in so many of these like top 30 teams with never actually achieving, a big result, even like playing any big events or doing anything big at a Cologne or anything like that. So it's kind of nice to see him come around and attend the last CSGO major. Obviously, just to kind of wrap up what actually happened. So Navi qualified Fnatic into the breach. Those are and Bad News Eagles. Those are the Legends teams. Then Gamer Legions, Apeks, OG, and Mongolz. Mongolz we spoke about a bit through exertion, but like in general, considering how they started, like they lost to Bait and Falcons, and then they beat Virtus Pro and FaZe to qualify in the end. That's like
pretty legit run, pretty much.
legit. Yeah, pretty legit run. OG, I think it's a team like no one wants to talk about because just like
Rightfully
whatever. So
I
whatever.
mean, they just need to fucking get an IGL and just get an actual lineup. Like at this point, even though they're doing okay, they're just not going to be an interesting team at the major. That's my problem.
The team,
It's like
they're good enough. The players are good enough to do something to get to the major, but not do anything at the major, and that's it.
Yeah.
They need to
Exactly.
find their identity. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
They feel like this, like little house cats. They're just a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, but actually nowhere at the same time. It's just that's all. You don't see anything special from them, and you don't see anything especially bad for them. So it's just like whatever.
Kind of a boring team at the moment. Yeah.
You couldn't say anything about VP. Can you say anything about Nexa?
Well, I don't believe Nex is coming back to that lineup. That's from what I can understand. But basically, I think he was just overburnt from everything that's going on, and it's just like. But I would like to see him in Fnatic, for example. Obviously, not Mongolz at this point. I don't know, teams like that. I think he would do well in Fnatic instead of Pasher.
Interesting. Yeah.
That would be a decent.
Just
lineup
as-
change.
I mean, that's a very that
player,
would be a
definitely.
very different. Yeah, with the positions would have to be thrown around a lot. I think.
I thought.
I think it's going to be valuable.
You said this on one of the shows with Thor and Maui, right? That he was like super underrated or something, but not just as a player. You want to see him as a player.
As a player, definitely. I don't want to see him as the IGL. He tends to overthink shit and is like get into his own head and just things piss him off. And I want to see him as a player. Just sit and be an anchor, and he's going to be a good anchor. So
Okay.
I want to see. I don't want him to take a bigger break because he's going to fade away a little bit. But yeah, we can move on.
Yeah. So and then the teams that didn't qualify, it's Falcons, FaZe, and Bait. They're going to be in the last chance. Sprout 1 win. Virtus Pro, Saw, and Viperio. Viperio, no one expected much from them. I think they did okay considering their run. They are still on a 17 or 15 match lose streak now, which sucks for them.
That is like 16 now. Yeah.
Saw was 0-3, but they lost to if you look at this before the event, it's like, they lost to Virtus Pro, Mongolz, and OG. But still, it's not an easy run, all in all.
No.
VP, we talked about 1 win, nothing really from them. Like there's some glimpses, but this team has not. The names look like it should be something. There should be something going on there, but they haven't proven anything. And then Sprout really is struggling, so let's not talk about them. It's sad.
I think Sprout I'm definitely sad about because they went from the team that we talked about at the last major is like, okay, they're like 1 move away from like a top 10-ish contender, and then they go the completely opposite way now.
They
all
made
that
3
shit that
moves,
happened
and
with
all of them were bad.
Yeah, exactly. Like all that shit that happened with refreshing, IGLing, everything all together, like none of the decisions they made in the last 6 months have worked out at all.
And that's why they're not at the major.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% their own fault, yeah.
That is, I mean, I said that I was going to ask you for the worst picks, but we kind of went over them. Does anything,
we did that.
Does anything stand out to you guys in terms of like team or player performances that were like very underwhelming?
All of Sprout.
Yeah.
And I guess, out of those, we haven't necessarily digged in because space and BP are obvious.
Yeah, I think positive for me was just individually Body. Like he has.
Oh yeah, he really wanted to go to Paris.
He was, it's like 125 rating as in a team that's not really great. Let's be real. He's been pulling some weight there, but yeah,
I mean, Kenny
happen.
Kenny was disappointing as fuck, I have to say.
Yes.
I was hoping for at least some pop-offs. You know, it's not like I expect him to be a consistent player. Like, it's not going to happen. He's never been that. If anything, like, he just has some flashy moments, right? But he just was nowhere to be seen.
Honestly, the two like positives were like NBK and Buddy. Like they did play well, right? I mean, I'm not really sure about the Python guy, but like definitely Body and NBK played better than anyone expected, including myself. And I mean, they had their chances. Now they are probably, out of the contention because they need to win against much better teams that they used to play in the first RMR group, right? So it's going to be super difficult for them. They had their chances, they missed out, and fired.
Let's talk about the Americas one. Obviously, the time zone kind of sucks, so I don't know how much you guys have been following. But let's start with you, kassad. Anything that caught your attention in terms of the result?
Pain. Obviously, I don't know. There is no time or any kind of motivation anymore to talk about EG. But the thing is, like, Pain definitely is the team that was on the uprise for the last few months. They eliminated Liquid from Pro League. They beat them again in the showdown for Blast. They now qualified before Liquid for the major. They lost to Furia yesterday. That veto was kind of fucked up, to be honest. But overall, they are a team that is looking quite good, and that is the biggest surprise in the North American/South American region. And I think like they are the new and upcoming team in that aspect. I think they're playing a lot without any respect towards anyone. They're playing loose Counter-Strike. They're sharp. They're playing decent, like tactically and structurally. And it's not like something like WoW or Tier 1, but they are playing good enough to be on these events. And them qualifying for the second major, because they did qualify for Rio, I believe.
You mean Pain? Stockholm, they played.
Yeah, Stockholm. Yes. Absolutely. They were in a group against us. Yeah, fuck. Anyway, so they did play well. So right now, they're the positive, the biggest surprise of that RMR in NA. The negative one would definitely be Liquid. Even though they qualified, they dropped the map against Nouns. They lost against Furia. They were like all over the place since Pro League. They did look okay in the group, in the playoffs disaster, in the showdown disaster. Yeah. It's like I honestly believe, and maybe I get some hate for this, that YEKINDAR is making them worse rather than better.
Why? Let's talk about Liquid. We have some time. I think their results are concerning, and they're a big team, so it's worth spending some time on them. Why do you think that is?
I feel like he is involved way too much in the game. I don't also like the interviews. It seems like that every time that he's like they won a game, he's the one stepping up, doing the interview. I'm calling, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Every time they lose, he's nowhere to be seen. Like especially in the interviews, like always some stupid statements. It's just I don't like that as a coach, as an ex-coach. Actually, I'm not even coach anymore. But the thing is, like, it seems to me that like he is like affecting their game way too much than he should be. I think the Nitro is suffocating a little bit. Elige is suffering as well. OC has dropped. OC is not a bad player. He's playing bad in the last God knows how long, but he's not a bad player. I'm telling you that he can perform. I feel like he's taking too much space for him. I don't know what's going on in the team or in their boot camps or in the practices, but that's like from the outside, from what I can see, it feels like that he's taking too much out of that team and the team is suffering. That's why they're playing bad.
Yeah, I mean, kassad, by the way, if you need to leave at some point.
I need to leave in about 2 minutes. Actually, a minute from now.
Okay. I'm giving you some last thoughts if you want to add something. Maybe if you want to do something for RMR Group B, give us a hot take. Give us all the hot takes.
The thing is, this is a biased take, obviously. It's not very, analytical, but I want the G2 and iNation to qualify. Obviously, the iNation is a Serbian-Croatian mix of players. There's 4 Serbians and 1 Croatian, and I want them to qualify because I'm the one who created iNation in 2010, and obviously I left it, and now 10 years later they have a chance to qualify as the first Serbian team. Only that's I'm going to be biased towards them. So yeah, that would be insane. But the thing is, like, when it comes to G2, it's going to be hard for them. I talked to Nico. He understands that, it's not easy to qualify. It's going to be hard. They're preparing right now, and it should be quite interesting in RMR. I'm looking forward to watch them. I don't have any crazy hot takes. It's just I'm totally like fan mode right now.
Yeah,
totally into watching and enjoying it.
They didn't sign up anyone as a coach. Why didn't they call you?
The thing is, like, we were discussing it, but I personally didn't want to meddle into their road
dynamic,
because like they did this by themselves. Nobody helped them. Like inside the organization, there's a couple of people who were there with them, who did everything, and the players make it themselves. So we were talking about it. I offered, like, if you need sometimes help on practice or something like that, they can always message me and ask me about certain situations. But me coming in as a coach would actually not help them. It would, like, damage their dynamic and the flow they have.
So essentially, what YEKINDAR did in Liquid, what you're saying, so you don't want to do that.
Yeah, I want to do anti YEKINDAR.
Okay, we'll let you go. Thanks for coming on, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
See ya. Thanks for having me. Catch you later.
No problem. Let's continue talking about Liquid, because this for me is I feel like it's difficult. A lot of things are difficult, but it's difficult to be what Liquid are kind of expected to be, and that is like a top 5 team consistently, while doing this back and forth from NA to Europe, and having players on both continents, having people be like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, the showdown result for me is also a consequence of them not boot camping for the showdown. The NAF interview that came out, he said they had 1 boot camp the whole year, which compared to other teams, I feel like is much worse. They have admitted multiple times that they fall behind because they don't have good enough practice.
Yeah.
I think it's not realistic to expect them to compete with, FaZe, G2, Heroic, Na'Vi, when they are like living in this. I mean, maybe Na'Vi last year we could compare because they were also displaced and it was living a very difficult life for them. But you can't really perform and elevate your level if you're not getting enough practice consistently.
But so there's like multiple aspects to this, and I always feel like it's a bit of a cop out to say that practice level is bad, but it's not to say that it's not true, because it obviously is. But I also think that you can still work through a lot of those issues as well. And then at a certain point, it comes to obviously like dedication as well, in terms of how willing you are to actually sacrifice time and personal life in order to elevate yourself, right? So whether that is Liquid basically relocating more or less to the Netherlands to stay at their HQ there to play from Netherlands and so on for the majority of a year. Let's say they do 6 months stretch or something to that effect. Maybe that's the solution. But like always going back to like, poor practice conditions and so on is like not feasible when you see Mongolia being able to field teams that are actually competitive at international events, or a team for now, and while still having a pretty like significant team. Like Mongolia has overtaken China as the best Asian country in that region, right? And that's not because they had excellent quality. I mean, they're a massive country, but they have 3 million inhabitants, right? So they definitely have.
Mongolia has only 3 million people.
3 or 4 or something like that. It's smaller than Norway in population.
Yep. But it's the second biggest, isn't it? The second biggest country in Asia, apart from
China, yeah.
Well, China, Russia,
yeah. So they don't have like a good starting point to become good, but then you have IHC, right, who surprised everyone and actually managed to not have it just be a one-off. Obviously now they've made lineup changes, which I think is a shame, but again, you can work through practice issues, and again, you can dedicate to yourself to do other things. A bunch of Mongolian teams play European qualifiers. Whenever there's open qualifiers, even if they sit there with 150 ping and so on, they go through that battle because they pick up something that they can learn from it, and so on. As for Liquid, it feels like every NA players has said this at some point, where they throw out the soundbite of, you pretty much have to live in Europe now in order to compete. So why aren't you?
Yeah,
that's like, kind of.
I think that is a part of the problem, because obviously you have someone like YEKINDAR, who not only is from Europe but also was a part of Virtus Pro, which was like a super grind team that played, a lot of practice, a lot of long hours, and I feel like that's where this is not something anyone has told me, but it just has to, from my point of view, there has to be some friction in terms of like how people want to spend time and what the priorities are in some of these situations. So
I mean, YEKINDAR has mentioned it a few too many times that some players want to stay at home for it not to cause some sort of friction, inside the team about like, okay, we're not practicing enough, we're not catching up enough to what we want to do. So I feel like that's got to be I don't think that there's any question that that's actually happening to some level at least.
Yeah,
and I mean, if that remains an issue, then obviously you have to get to a point where you potentially have to look for replacements. I think it's going to be obviously extremely hard to replace someone like a Liege or an Af, or obviously just given their skill level. But again, like
I don't think it's Nav though. I think it's Nav is like the one that's never has caused issues.
I'm not
in terms of playtime, maybe because I don't think he's like a grinder. I think he's just kind of like the guy who will just turn up to a match with barely any hours and just turn up. But in terms of more like the European side of things,
I mean,
I get that.
From what I know, he's also spending a lot of time in Europe for personal reasons. So I don't think he is the problem in terms of that. Obviously, Nitro has a family. That's one of the things that is huge. So I don't know. Moving forward, what do you expect from, because as Nav said, they did what they needed to do.
Yeah.
Considering how they played, that's kind of a success in a way. What do we expect at the major from Liquid?
I'll say they should be happy with the top 8. That's my assessment of Liquid as of right now. Yeah. They should be happy with the top 8. If they can make it one step further, fantastic. I don't see that as likely. It just seems like there's a lot of teams in better form and just better outlook and just better current shape, even though that's obviously not going to matter as much come May. But for Liquid, they don't have a lot of positives to really draw off of. They're just a quality team that usually perform well at big tournaments, right? So they have that going for them, and that's why I'm putting them in a top 8, and that can be enough. But they're not going to be a contender for the major.
Yeah, I mean, since Katowice, it's turned around so much for this team. But at that time, I still felt like, okay, they're just right around the corner from being able to compete for some titles. They're just on the precipice. But they since then it's just gone so downhill. So I'm not even sure that wouldn't even say the playoffs is feasible at this point because of how they've looked so far. I have to say I've barely watched the Americas RMR because I was focused on the Asia one. I woke up at 4 a.m. when Americas was finishing, but I was already watching Asia. So it's the region that I paid by far the least attention to. So I can't even speak to what exactly went wrong for them or why they looked off.
I guess in a sense, they're coming in as favorites. Their job is just to qualify, more or less. I think that
don't say it, Prof.
He said qualify. He said
qualify.
He's definitely said qualify.
That's irrelevant now, Prof. Don't worry.
My God, he saw that too. Jesus Christ. I'm really surrounded, man.
Yeah. Honestly, I think we're gonna see Liquid avoid the pitfall that a lot of the EU teams that have qualified now, who have been a bit of surprise, right? Like we mentioned, the fact that obviously the good teams are going to probably do well at the major, surprise, but some of the surprises are likely to have a bit of a rougher go at it once they get to the actual major, like when teams have looked thoroughly into them and so on, right? That's when adaptation comes in, and that's where lesser teams usually fall off. I don't think Liquid are going to be better at dealing with that stuff, so they're going to gain a couple of spots for free, if you want to put it that way, just off the back of that.
Let's just wrap up the results of the placing. So Furia went to Legends, they went to Rio, then beat Pain. Pain, Complexity, Liquid, and Fluxo are the other 4 teams that qualified. They lost 1 spot compared to last year because of the results, essentially, and how the teams from Americas placed at the Rio Major.
Yeah.
So that's it. So essentially, MIBR is probably the biggest name that missed out.
Imperial, MIBR, those 2 for sure. Yeah.
With Imperial, those are the 2 bigger names.
EG, obviously.
EG, XertioN were the next 2 teams probably in line that we kind of thought would have a chance maybe, but we weren't sure.
I kind of had my hopes up to see a little bit more out of Bestia and Flamengo Esports. Right. Obviously, that is a bit of a far shout in that sense, but Flamengo obviously started off by winning versus MIBR, so I had high hopes for them. Same thing with Beste, because I think they beat Nouns, I want to say, which is looked at as one of the stronger like NA representatives.
Beste were actually close, man. Like they were.
Yeah.
Well, they played 16-14 against Fluxo and 1-2 against MIBR. So yeah, not bad. That was Lucan and Mayer and those guys, the Argentinians. There's definitely some competition. It's not like these, it was 2-3 good teams and everything else was, trash. Like there was competition for the 4th, 5th spot. There was a bunch of teams that could have made it. But overall, pretty much expected complexity stepping up this year.
Finally.
Considering their results, it seems pretty. It's an expected result just based on what they've done so far.
I mean, you would have expected them to qualify for Rio as well. But obviously that time around, the whole fairy tale story of Imperial had to go through. It seemed like it's just written in the stars.
Unstoppable.
Plot armor.
Plot armor is unbeaten. But I'm kind of curious. Just a very quickly, like with Pain qualifying, obviously, I expected them to qualify, but for them to go 3-0, I did not have in my cards. I'm a little bit curious to see how they're going to do at the major, because they played Nuke, which is fantastic. They're a great Nuke team, but I don't think they're going to have that luxury going into the major.
Something to keep our eyes out for sure. FaZe RMR also did not really surprise that much. Greyhound first this time, Mongolz number 2, but that's kind of what we have been having for the last 2-3 majors. Rare Atom finished 3rd. They, to be honest, were pretty crippled considering obviously all of the tech issues affected their matches. There's also some conspiracy theories on Twitter.
There's a lot of bad Rare Atom fans, man.
But like every reply to the Mongolz qualifying tweet on HLTV. Let's sum it up. That's, I mean, pretty rough for them. Like I feel like there is definitely a shot for them to be in the top 2. Kaze was sick throughout the whole thing. Just awful.
Physically sick. He
was. I think they really got shafted. I feel like I watched more Asia than Europe even, because like I was in charge of the live post, and so I was kind of paying attention a lot, and they really got shafted by far the most out of a lot of everybody by everything, by the technical issues. Kaze wasn't even the only one who was sick. I think Mozia or something, like one of the other guys were also just fell down with something, fell ill with something, whatever. Came down with something. That's the phrase I was looking for. And then on top of that, they had the 2 hardest like technical issues that they could have. So Kaze probably just didn't have a lot of time to rest, even to get a little bit better, or whoever the other guy was who was sick. They never really said. So I think they probably should have been in a position where they would have been able to compete for one of those 2 spots. They didn't really play particularly well against Mongolz either time, and it probably would have been close if it wasn't for all these issues, for all these illnesses. And so it really came a little bit unfortunate to them that all of this happened to them. Otherwise, I think you're right. I mean, the only other takeaway would be that the Mongolz looked pretty solid with Azteca, because that was their first tournament with them. And I have to say that the fact that Azteca was like 0.85 rating or 0.990 rating or something like that, and they still looked about as convincing in Asia as they did before, that speaks a lot to how solid as a team they are. And you can just tell at these games against these Asian teams, they just know how to play Counter-Strike much better. They just understand meta. They just know how to close out rounds. They have a pretty good mid-round caller, as far as I can tell, in Blitz. Like he really, like there were multiple situations where any other Asian team would just like push into a site that they weren't supposed to, but any other European team would have made the call to go to the other side. So some of these like snap mid-round decisions that Mongolz just do that other Asian teams just are not capable of, because they don't understand the meta, they don't understand these situations as well as the European teams or even some of the American teams. I think it really just speaks to how far ahead of the other Asian teams Mongolz are in terms of their understanding that they could lose a star, and scored, not lose. They decided to kick him, who was literally like 1.35 rating at the last RMR or some shit, and literally carried them through it, and still, looked pretty convincing while doing it the second time around, even though they lost to Greyhound, whatever. They were still pretty close to beating the Greyhound anyway. So I think that just speaks to the Mongolz stance at the moment.
Yeah, the quality. No, yeah, they have a surprising amount of quality. Like for how obscure the Asian region feels at times, obviously in the grand scheme of things, the fact that they have a solid five and they're able to find someone who's able to slot in. And we'll see obviously how HLTV actually takes to other major teams and so on. But it was nice to see them not completely collapsing, because that's kind of what I expected going into this.
Yeah.
I was always going to be between Rare Atom, Mongolz, and Greyhound, but with that lineup change, again, I still think it's a very odd one to remove Score from the lineup. I would have loved to see them just continuing on with it, because I think they're a team that still would have had lots of areas to improve upon that wouldn't be necessarily too difficult to implement either. So saddened by that, but it's still cool to see them qualify. But it did feel like Rare Atom missed their opportunity, because the Mongols have never been weaker, if you want to put it that way, than they were now.
I think especially like moving forward, I think it's probably going to show when the Mongols now play some of the European teams that have just much more firepower than they do now. Unless HLTV just somehow like steps up and actually becomes like a decent player that they can rely on in terms of fragging power. Doesn't look like it at the moment. I mean, from what I was watching them, he just was fairly invisible. Like I didn't really understand what exactly made this move so appealing for them, because I think I was looking at it and I never saw those like weird, crazy, like occasional crazy moments that the Mongols sometimes had. And that was in part due to Score, because sometimes you just notice him too much for the wrong reasons, you know, that he just like pushed in like through a smoke like randomly, like a little bit of that like old whatever people call Asian style that doesn't really exist. Like it's kind of like a standard that never really was the case, because not every Asian team really plays this way. But still, like you could tell that those crazy moments weren't there anymore. But at the same time, they definitely lost like the upside of Score, which is just he can pop off in games like really crazily and just win them sometimes on his own, you know. So I think that's going to show when they do come up against teams that just have much more firepower than these Asian teams do. Yeah,
the pickup was an odd one as well, because weirdly enough, like there's quite a few decent teams in Mongolia, and HLTV was not a standout in clutch, by any means. And again, you have Eruption, you have Renewal, like those kind of teams that had individuals who obviously on paper looked more promising, and also gave IHC at the time issues when they would play domestic matchups, right? So you'd imagine that they had an eye on some of those players, because there would be 10 other potential suitors than HLTV, because HLTV it's not like a 17-year-old either.
No, it's like 24 or something. He's not young.
So they haven't gone that route, which is really weird.
I mean, that is the crazy part to me, right? Like, okay, if Score is a bit crazy and maybe he doesn't necessarily fit kind of like the European style, whatever you want to play, like this is type of stuff that you can kind of teach him over time, you know, like long term, surely that is the upside, you know, like
you have
whatever what is he 20? But he's been playing
just NPL approach, right, from Navi. It's like maybe he's not as good as SDY today, but there's potential to.
Yeah, but I mean, Score is just better than the HLTV guy. That's fairly obvious. Like that, I don't think there's any question about that. But like,
well, I think
apparently it was more to do with playstyle, than anything.
They played with him before, so it's like go for the
like bet or whatever. But yeah, I do think that the firepower issue is really gonna show. I think I don't think they're gonna be able to pull off some of these upsets that they have in the past few months still.
Yep.
We are need to move on, because we have to do the RMR B. We need to do the Skinionaire as well. So let's hop into the Skinionaire, Lucas, whenever you're ready. We're gonna have vENdetta answering some questions, and then we're gonna do a quickish preview of RMR B, as do maybe a tier list. How's the situation, producer man?
Lucas has left us.
Hello.
Muting, unmuting.
Hello. Nothing.
Don't worry. All right.
Okay. So we have some questions. We have a link. There's some sound now. There's music. Ooh. So we can open that and we can get ready. As SPUNJ should write BitSkins in chat. I see he is in chat. So he gets a chance to win a skin. That would actually be pretty funny. So
not rigged at all.
Not rigged at all. Let's go. Okay. Whenever you're ready, Lucas, let's roll the first question. So question number 1. These 3 players were top 3 rated ones in EU RMR A, but who was the number 1? NPL, xertioN, or CYPHER?
That was the artist formerly known as Nipple.
You are free to click the thing yourself if you want. Can you click it?
And I'm
Yeah.
locking it in.
No. And the answer is?
The answer is Nipple.
Let's
Or
go.
NPL.
I think we should definitely force Nipple as much as possible.
It was his original name, right?
Until someone like, sends me an
Says something.
angry email or something, I'll be calling him Nipple.
Okay, great. Good
Let's
to
go
know.
with the second question.
Simple calls him nipple, and like, who else would you listen to?
Which pair of teams has the one with the least and most maps played at the RMR? So one of the two is the least played and one has the most played maps. So is it FaZe and Fnatic, Navi and Bait, or Saw and One Run?
It has to be a 3-0 or an 0-3 and a 5. Someone who went to the round 5, right? If I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the question. Yes.
So Navi went 3-0, Bait went 2 and 3. Hard to
That's
beat the
correct.
combos. Saw went 0 and 3. One win went 1 and 3. FaZe went 5 maps, but Fnatic played 4, if I'm not mistaken. No, they went 3-0 as well. So FaZe and Bait have played the same amount of maps. Navi and Fnatic have played the same amount of maps.
Doesn't have to be because
Depends. Best of
three.
threes. They might
Oh,
not have
right.
played 8 seconds.
I'm gonna go with Navi here. I feel like that's the safe one.
Okay. And the answer is?
I think that should be right.
It is. They won.
Navi beat FaZe for 2-0, and
2-0,
they beat
yeah.
the 2 maps before, so they obviously had to play the least maps.
Yeah,
Okay.
Navi was the least one for sure. I was just curious if Bait had played I guess they would have been the most category anyway, so it would actually just be beneficial if they played a bunch of 3-mappers.
Question number 3. Only 2 NA players were among the 10 best at their RMR with a 1+18+ rating. Who was it? Fang and Floppy, Elysia Naf, or Automatic and Klasia?
Didn't Elise top the entire thing? Stat-wise?
No.
Okay,
can tell you
I
that's
think
not
it had like a
correct.
1 something high. I want to say Elise. Well, Naf didn't have a great event, did he? This is either
Michael,
Fang or
do you
Floppy.
have any-
Yeah, do you have any input here? This is either it is.
I
between
told
Fang
you
and
I
Floppy and Elise and
haven't.
Naf.
I would hazard a guess and say Fang and Floppy, but I'm not 100% sure.
Just off of the record.
I'm fairly sure it's not Automatic and Klasia.
I want to say that Naf had a pretty rough start to the event, which is why I'm worried. I know Elise played well. So yeah, I'm willing to risk it on Fang and Floppy.
Okay, click. Make your pick.
Yeah, and I'm gonna blame Striker if this is wrong.
The answer is
Oh,
What?
really?
absolute shocking scenes.
Seriously?
Absolute shocking scenes.
Yeah, that is Automatic. I knew play, but again, I didn't see a single game that Klausio played. So
Let's move on to the fourth question. Now we're looking at max $15 if you get the rest correct.
ooh, yeah, that's
How many times in a row have IHC/the Mongolz qualified for a major? 2, 3, or 4?
were they in Stockholm? Ugh.
I can answer that.
Let me know.
They weren't.
Okay, so then it's 2, right? With Rio and now.
Well, then this would be the third then, right?
If it's Rio, then now. What am I
Antwerp?
missing? Oh, Antwerp. Oh God.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a lot of saving there.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You just made my head spin around even more. No. Wait. You did mention the fact that the last 3 qualifiers Mongols were amongst the top 2 in RMRs. Just swap position with Greyhound, right? Yep. So that means they have qualified 3 times.
Antwerp, Rio, and Paris. That is 3.
Yeah.
You need more help.
We're lucky needed.
Let's go. Let's go.
No, and again, I was just recalling back to the RMR conversation.
What's the
about
answer? What's the answer?
I've locked in 3, so it better be the answer.
Okay, let's go. Last question. From an interview on HLTV, who said, "If we make it out of groups, for sure I'll do a shoey"? Was it Dexter, JKS, or Alistair?
Are we talking RMR groups?
It was major groups.
Major groups. JKS, I highly doubt would have said that. This should be Alistar, right? Because they're the least likely to actually make it through groups. I don't think it would be that massive of a surprise for Dexter or JKS to actually make it through playoffs.
I like
So
the logic.
I'm gonna lock in Alistar. He's the one
Locked in
who's
Alistair, and the
Yeah.
answer is. Let's go.
There we
Alistair.
go. He's the one closest to his roots as well. You know, the other guys have abandoned Australia. They've gone to Europe. They've lost their roots.
Don't even know what a shoey is anymore.
Exactly.
Absolutely tragic scenes.
He said right there and then when they qualify, when they advance from the challenger stage, he'll do
The
shoot.
username, that one is Bljat Spinat.
Solid name. That's a solid name.
Good one, yeah.
Bljat Spinach. Congrats to Bljat Spinach, following since 21. Lucas, don't give SPUNJ the skin. Okay, let's talk about RMR Group B. We can bring up the tier maker thing when you have time, Lucas. Obviously, same thing, 16 teams, 8 qualify, and 3 extra will go to the last chance. And this group is definitely more stacked, and even the teams that are not that like big names, like Nine, Monty, Aurora, are also kind of better form than, you know, some of the ITBs that we witnessed actually qualify from Group A. So
yeah,
by all means, this should be a bloodbath. There should be like quite a few big names, at least put under pressure, if not missing out completely.
I mean, I feel like there's like no way that everybody that we expect to make it will make it, honestly, almost. Because like at some point there's going to be some fucked matchup that will just throw it in a spin.
Oh yeah, there always is. Like Force is definitely one team to like mess up one of the assumed favorites.
I feel like I literally have like one team that I don't expect to do anything. Everybody else is fucking fair game.
I have 2 that I'm very low on.
500 is the other one.
Oh, okay. So yeah, in that sense, who's not going to do anything? I think iNation and 500.
Okay.
Not going to be able to do anything.
Do you want to start by putting them in no chance then? So iNation,
iNation 100% as far as I'm concerned. 500, I think there's some level of chance that they will at least like have some say in it, but I don't also expect them to do well. But I think, yeah, everybody else is fair game.
Okay. So where do you want to start with the teams? Let's just start with
we can do
Striker.
Lock-ins, I guess, right?
Yeah, you pick one.
All right,
Man,
start Striker.
I know I shouldn't say G2, but I'll do Heroic first because I do actually think that they are less. There's a less of a chance for them.
G2.
Not exactly. I think there actually is less of a chance for Heroic to fuck up than G2.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go with Ents.
Lock in.
Yeah.
Okay.
What makes you? Obviously, they had a good EPL run.
Yeah.
What makes you so confident in this pool of teams?
I think they just have an ability with Snappy to rarely heavily underperform, which I think is a strength versus a lot of the team. Like, and again, when you're going up against unknowns in that sense, I think on an average day they're a very, very good team that should make it through. Wait, I should clarify. When you say lock-ins, you mean as legends?
No, I mean just that they make it through.
Yeah. They're making it through. They're making it through. They just think that their floor is good enough to beat a ton of teams that, they don't really have that many bad days in that sense. And I think Nerds has been a really exciting pickup and so on. And I think they just have a lot of stuff that they have a surprising amount of players who can outright win them a game by themselves now.
Yeah, I would push Cloud9 in that group as well. This is the thing. It's not like I would say Cloud9 is more likely to win the major than G2, but they are more likely to go through the group than G2 because that is their stomping ground. They do well in groups usually, so they rarely underperform. Even though this is going to be like a very fucking stacked group, I still think that they're pretty safe as you can be in this kind of field.
I am a little bit worried about the Force matchup because it's just Russians on Russians. Yeah. That was just looking into that because I forgot who they're playing. It's fucking funny. It's Spirit against Aurora and Cloud9 against Force. It's the Russians facing off against each other.
Yeah.
And that's always fun. And it's always kind of a toss-up, it feels like to me. So that's the only thing that they might drop early, but it's not like that's actually a bad thing potentially at some point because like you don't get the hardest matchups as you go further. And so like it just eventually ends up, as long as you don't lose that second game and you enter the elimination zone, I think you're usually fine. So I think that's the that's a safe pick. Yeah.
Plus Cloud9 are playing online games again, so
they are.
They're going to be good.
They've been destroying like ever since that IC game. I think their record is 18-2, and they've played shitloads like since then. Like they've really played a lot in the last couple of months.
In the finals as well, like just a couple of weeks ago. Pretty.
Oh yeah, in that boom thing, right?
Yeah, Boombastic something. Boombox tournament.
Yeah.
Graffiti live challenge.
Yeah.
Explosion 360.
Yeah. Fucking Chuck G2 in there. We have to. Like
Yeah.
it is. We just can't make an argument that they shouldn't be lock-ins. Honestly.
No.
Yeah. I think honestly, I feel like we have to do the same with Vitality, even though that is a bit controversial.
You think so?
Well, I guess we have to fill out more tiers, so we can.
I feel like they are not in the same tier as these 4 teams. I feel like they are just
but there are a fair few amount of spots that are being handed out.
I think look, we said like we there's a pretty good chance that one of the big teams is just not going to make it through whatever fucked matchup at some point happening. I think you're right in the sense that I would say, and you're right in the sense that Vitality, out of those 5 are the most likely. So like just to reflect that in some way, we can put them just a tier below.
We could just keep them on the bench for right now and go through the others.
Let's put them in a decent shot for now. Let's put them. And what I would do, I would rename. Can we rename Dark Horse to like In Danger, and rename Mech to Dark Horse.
Okay.
So I feel like this makes a bit more sense for this group.
Sure.
Fair.
So because for example, NIP is a team that is big on paper, but I think they're definitely in danger of missing out. Like their name is stronger than their form by a significant margin.
Oh yeah.
So I would put them in the in danger category right now.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair.
And at this point, I would even put them more likely to not be in than to be in. To be honest,
I feel like Dark Horse is a stronger category than
like,
danger.
Yeah. So maybe what can you
move Dark Horse 1 up if you push the arrow on the side there?
Lucas. Yeah, that would make sense.
There we go.
Colors are fucked, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I would say, I agree with NIP and danger, and I would also put not to go with 2 teams, so I'll just stick with 1. I'll put Big there.
Yeah,
Big in danger. Yeah.
I like just the loss of xertioN it's nothing against Piped by any means at all. I don't think he's as good of an operator as xertioN. I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. And I think he's done fairly okay for
he's been a little bit overhyped, if anything.
I think he's done okay, but I think he's like in the same boat as a Head Trick, as like a lot of these operators that are being brought into teams now, who have some very good games. People get very excited about it, and then they're very, very average. They're like your standard top 15 team operator. There's nothing that's really like put in them in front of the others. So I think Big are going to have a hard time, especially because Tabson seems to have had a bit of a lull in form as well. So unless he turns on the Jets, I have a hard time seeing Crimbo being able to solo carry Big to a major.
Yeah, that is the one upside that I have for Big, is that Grimbo has just been really sick lately, and that's the he's just been their obvious star. Hyped, I just think he's definitely an exciting player to watch. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like he's a bit more aggressive than the typical opera and goes for a few more plays. But I mean that will just make him a little bit more inconsistent. And he's definitely, based on a few games that he did really well, he's been overhyped. So I definitely feel with you. I think they're not very stable at the moment.
Which team are you picking, Striker, for any category now?
Let me see. I would say, man, I'd still put Spirits with a decent shot. I think their recent form is not really reflective of what that team can do. I think that this year, I think it's a bit... Yeah, I'm still not necessarily decided about like if they should be making it in or not, because they've really not been the same Spirit that we saw even last year for most of the time. They had some really bad losses, even at the CCT finals, where they were supposed to be pretty good. They were looking rough. Then they had a couple of good games again at Pro League, but they didn't do particularly well overall. So I'm just not 100% sure where to put them.
But I feel like they're gonna.
It's like the major buck feeling, that like I can't really explain because they've done so well at the previous majors. I even looked through it back. I'm doing like the bullet points preview again, and I have to finish it after this. And I even looked back. They haven't made a big event playoffs outside of the majors. They've literally made 2 playoffs in the past year and a half, and that's the 2 majors. That's in Antwerp at the semifinals and quarterfinals in Rio.
Yeah. I mean, I would put them in decent shot because of that exactly.
They have like two strong players. I think not to have like a really good shot, to be honest. Yeah.
To me, Spirit feels like the team that are not good enough to be in decent shot, or not strong enough form wise to be in decent shot,
Right.
but they're too good to be in Dark Horse.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like,
and they're not necessarily in danger either, because I think there's weaker teams than them.
Yeah. I think they're definitely better than NIP and Big at the moment.
Yeah,
I think so too.
For me, I would take Astralis next and put it in decent shot. I think they're improving and at the right time. They're like rising into form. They did beat Cloud9 in the Rio
Dallas
qualifier, right? And they also beat Spirit twice recently. So I think they should make it through. Obviously, people are gonna be delusional, but look at the results. Just look at the results. I'm not making this up. They are better than.
No, they definitely have looked improved, 100%.
Yeah. The question is like how consistent that improvement's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the Cloud9 thing that definitely caught me off guard. I did not see that happening in any world, given the recent form, and them beating Spirit feels like a bit of a gimme just off of Spirit's recent form. So, and I mean, they even lost to Spirit at Pro League as well before beating them.
The only problem I see potentially is that Vitality is their first matchup and they're fairly low seed. The whole seeded situation is they're just fucked in general, so I don't even know if it's going to matter. It's not like I've gone through like the potential matchups that they could face afterwards, because like this RMR could just go any which way. So there's not even really much point in trying to predict like some of these results and like base any sort of the opinions on who's going to go through or not based on it, because it's really going to be difficult all the way around. Yeah. But I agree with where we've put them.
Yeah. If I'm to pick next, would you guys hate me if I said Force had a decent shot at qualifying?
No,
because again, we're already filling up 8 spots here now.
I agree with you. Like we did the power ranking internally. I put them at 6th. I think I put them at 6
as well.
I put them in front of Astralis and Spirit. Yeah, based on recent form, like they're just looking better. So they reached the grand final of also the Boombox bet invitational, whatever. So I think they need to be up there. And obviously, people are saying like, oh, how can Astralis and Vitality be in the same group? Obviously, not everyone in the same group is like equally favored to go through. But we're just like, Vitality is out of these 4 teams the closest to a lock-in. But we can maybe argue to be there, but we put them level below. But I think this makes sense in terms of like the expected teams. These 8 teams are on paper the best.
Yeah, and also those 2 teams are like kind of like they are probably the closest matchup of everything. At the maybe Cloud9 4s would be there's the debate to be had about that, but everything else is fairly one-sided. So I think that's another factor in that like one of Vitality or Astralis is going to be 1-0-1, and from there it could get difficult.
So
yeah, go next. Or you did first.
I think it's your turn now.
So I think these 4 teams are all dark horses, honestly. Like I think they all could qualify. I think they all are not favorites name-wise or ranking-wise or result-wise. Like they don't play the big tournaments that often, so they don't really have the chance to impress the same way like a Big or an NIP does. But I think all of them are more or less capable of beating NIP or Big or outperforming them, also losing to them.
Like
I'm not saying it's like,
they could lose to iNation in 500 as well. They're just that, and that's so. Can you swap around like the order of teams in Dark Horse? Okay, you can. Okay, so Prof, rank them from strongest to weakest out of the 4 you have there, in your opinion.
I think it's very close. I think I would put Monty, Aurora, Eternal Fire, and then 9. I think 9 is going to be a bit overhyped based on the showdown performance because they beat Fnatic, but we also saw that Fnatic wasn't in hugely insane form. Right. I think it's one of the tournaments that has more spotlight, but if you look at Aurora and Monty, they beat 9. Like there was head-to-heads between these teams where they would have more wins. Like both of these teams had like pretty good tier 2, tier 3 runs. So, but it's very close. I think it's like very close between these teams. And I think obviously Eternal Fire also on LAN are going to perform, I think, better. They're kind of maybe a safer pick. So maybe because of the land factor, I would push them in front. And Xantares is a beast. So I don't know how you feel. Maybe I would put them as number 1 in the dark horse category, but it's very, very close.
I mean, I have to check even what I did for the power ranking. I think I put 9 a bit further up. I would have to check exactly how. Wait, let me see.
While you're looking at, I'll kind of just pony on Striker there. I actually think I would have put 9, if not as the strongest team, then the second strongest team. Not necessarily off the back of their showdown performance only. I just think they have a surprisingly good map pool, surprisingly strong and consistent players.
Yeah.
And I'd probably put
team. I like the team a lot.
Yeah, I'd probably put Eternal Fire and 9 at the front. Like basically put those 2 at the back at the very front. And then I'm a little bit. Monty to me is a bit of a question mark. Boros, for instance, absolute beast 99% of the time. His Bucharest qualifier was obviously a hot mess. So like I'm not sure what kind of LAN player Boros is in that sense. Like if he's able to like find his groove in offline environments. Same thing with Woro 2K. He's been up and down as well. I remember like when we played them in Stockholm, for instance, he was just not the same kind of player, not the same kind of danger that you were used to running into.
I think that's the land factor for those 2 teams is definitely when I was looking at the result, like kind of ranked based on results and not really taking into effect, the land factor.
Sure,
which is fine when doing a power ranking because that's a power ranking. But in terms of what we expect on the land, I agree. I would swap. I put Eternal Fire first, and then we can put 9 behind them if that's your guys' opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to live in a world where Centaurus is like the top player of the entire RMR B.
Right.
Yeah.
I had Eternal Fire first out of those 4 teams. I had Eternal Fire, Monty, 9, Aurora in this order, but I had problems like with especially Monty, Aurora, 9. Like the Eternal Fire, I was thinking the exact same thing you guys were, that they just have way more experience than all these other 3 teams. So I think that's something that could propel them forward. And they already proved, at the CCT finals that they can play this level of teams well. So I think I'm pretty sure that's kind of like where I was thinking when I was picking this, because we did this like 2 weeks ago now. So or like at least a week ago. Monty, Aurora, that's kind of like the question mark, right? It's like Aurora have a bit more to say in terms of LAN because they have
X-Force guys.
Yeah, Kenzie and Norway, right? Are those 2.
And Lackey as well.
Yeah, Lackey from Entropic. So these guys are also something that it's not just going to rattle them when they go on LAN and play some of these better teams. While in Monty, it's kind of like up and down, right? Like there's a couple of guys who haven't really played much. There's like SDY who has obviously a lot of experience, but other than that, it's a bit shoddy. So definitely a big question mark. But like if we were just to look at online results, like Monty would have been ahead way, like because they've been tearing it up. They've been crazy
4 tournaments in the last 4 weeks or something that they've
something
won?
Like it, even less than that. I think it's like 3 weeks or some shit that they won 4 tournaments in.
Lucas, can you put Eternal Fire? So the blue, number 1. Yeah, and you can put 9 behind them. Yeah, and you can swap iNation 500 on the last one, and you can swap Big and NIP as well because Big definitely.
I have the same. Yeah.
So no, don't swap. Don't swap that.
No, I don't know. I think I would put. I mean, at the top, if we want to order it, I would put ends at the end.
Yeah, I would put ends at the end, and I would put
this in this order with ends at the end. Honestly. Maybe with Cloud9 Heroic.
I think this is okay. That's very close, I'd say, in those. Yeah. And I would keep this. I think this is okay.
I think this makes sense, but I do think a lot of this group is going to be down to, like, we're going to get a lot of wacky results off the back of the seeding, obviously, like the matchups that we're going to get. I think for first round, obviously, I don't see 9 obviously beating G2 or anything like that. That feels a bit too far out of left field. But I think once we get into the 1-1 matches or 0-1 matches and so on, then we could get something like you said, Prof, right? Like if Monty ends up drawing 9, I think that's beneficial for them just off of past, right? Like familiarity and confidence going into that matchup. But I think 9 can potentially do better versus, let's say, Astralis than Monty would. and so on and so forth. Like,
Right.
a lot of that is going to come into play, and obviously we won't know that until it actually happens. And I don't have a spreadsheet advanced enough to actually, you know, go through all of those scenarios. But I think regardless, we're going to lose some assumed favorites, or I guess expected favorite teams, whatever you want to call them, bigger teams.
Yes. Do you, let's just kind of finish it off by, if you had like a personal, not like a team that you expect to go through, is there a team that you want to see go through yours, like your personal favorite from all the teams here?
I will say, like, a team that I want to go through out of the ones I expect to go through, or outside of the ones I expect to go through, I want to see Force go through. And that's mainly because of Jerry. What Jerry's doing to teams after basically getting rinsed of the players that he's brought up, etc., and like doing it time and time again, beating teams that are better than what Force are meant to be, and kind of just constantly going on that grind without getting that much recognition for himself. I think is admirable, and I think he deserves to qualify for a major. Obviously, he has to earn it as well, but like in my mind, he has earned at least another player or another major berth.
I fucking love the internet. So you mentioned Jerry. So there's one comment in the chat. Jerry is quite a douche, and the next one underneath that, I love Jerry. So that's just internet in the nutshell. What about you, Striker?
I'll go with two teams actually. One of them, well, actually both of them, kind of like because I just like them both. But Eternal Fire would be one of them. I just think that after all the shit that they went through with like fucking changes on top of changes, and basically like plus minus at the same player 4 different times and things like that, I think now they're like in a place where they should be doing well, and I think they've just shown that they can compete. So I would like them through, and they also have a massive following. They'll just rack up some numbers. Like they'll help the viewers for the viewer numbers. That's another kind of more like tournament focused factor. And 9 is the other one, just because of Polish Counter-Strike has been struggling for a long time, but now we're getting a team that's actually looking like they could be getting somewhere. They qualified for Rio, right? Or was it the Rio or Dallas? I don't remember which one of them they qualified for. But I think Rio it was. I like them.
Yeah, I also like 9. I think it's a good team, good mixture for the first time in a long time. They qualified for Rio, yeah. They're playing ESL Challenger as well. So obviously, iNation, first Croatian at an RMR. It's crazy. Someone from the younger generation, someone I'd never, like when I was playing, coaching, whatever, never really got to know. He was like came up after my time, so that's cool. And he's also one of the people that came up through, you know, FPL grinding more so than domestic scenes. That's kind of the newer generation. Depression, that is. It's a perfect nickname. What a great nickname to be Croatian. I love it. Amazing. And he's also, I think he's more Bosnian than Croatian. But cool.
Were you surprised to see that Depression was the first person from Croatia to actually make it to an RMR? Outside of like
no, I'm not really. We never really had many like standout talents, to be honest. There's like, it was always kind of teams that worked as a team more so than what?
Isn't Roga from Croatia?
Yeah, he is. He's pretty decent.
He's a pretty solid individual, at least. I'm not sure if he's been in the right teams though.
He's pretty solid. I'd say iNation, Eternal Fire, especially for Major. I'd really like him to get to Major to get some stickers. I think he did. Did he ever make a Major? Actually, Major. Did Major
Boston?
Yeah,
but that was when he made the Challenger stage. But that was like at the time.
They made Legends stage. That was the only time Turkish team. I just checked it today. I'm fairly certain about that. I think in Boston that was the only time that Space Soldiers made it to.
Major made it to. He was in group stage, the Elite Major. Yeah, okay. So Boston.
But essentially, he's someone that like went through all of the shit. Even back in Space Soldiers, so that team was like definitely underpaid for what they were performing. They're like. That was insane what they were doing with like salaries of 500 euros or something. You're going to majors and shit like that. So I would like for him, especially after coming back again, to accomplish this. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. By the way, is it slightly crazy that Eternal Fire pretty much has the same Space Soldiers lineup as they did in 2017?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is slightly
like-
crazy.
and, like-
It is slightly crazy. Yeah.
And like we waited for Space Soldiers to kind of get over that hump for such a long time, and they tried so many different players. The fact that they've been able to make it back to an RMR with pretty much what I guess the true and tried, obviously outside of xCloud, but I think that's really cool. But I also think that is a little bit of a sad story as well, because there's so much unrealized potential
Yeah.
with the not just Space Soldiers, Eternal Fire, but it feels like the Turkish scene as well, because they've had a lot of good players over the course of the years, but it seems like they've had a similar issue to the Polish scene, where it's just like a lot of good players who are not necessarily meshing too well, so you can never get that fully stacked 5.
It is like people don't realize it is actually quite a big CS country. Like there's a lot of
It's
like
massive,
Space Soldiers. Space Soldiers had a really big following. Eternal Fire have a really big following. Like every time I look into like numbers into like where we get like views from,
Clicks
like from
and
which
stuff,
countries, like Turkey is really high up there all the time. Like it's kind of crazy. I don't think people realize that who like aren't 2 and 2 and 2, like some of these fan numbers.
Yeah, and they're dedicated as well.
Yeah.
Let's have one question that I'm going to ask from the questions that we got on Instagram. I just lost it. Where is it?
Don't worry, I'll play the bumper while you find it.
Let's do that quickly. Hello, and here's the question. The question is from Yokotozi on Instagram. He says, "You guys don't ever take a question from here. Stop lying." It's not even a question, but I read it. So
yeah. That's why you're not taking them, because everybody's just throwing statements at you.
Yeah. HLTV hosted Major when? This is the question for Striker.
What's sorry? HLTV when we host Major?
Yeah. Like in Major of
I don't have a funny answer. I'm sorry.
Don't worry, I got this one. Just give it to me. I'll do it.
Oh my god, that would be the worst production ever.
Don't worry, I will be admin, I will do servers, I will do everything. I will design all the stickers in paint.
Audio guy?
We have a question in chat. It's from username SPUNJ. SPUNJ.
That's a pretty bad nickname, honestly.
SPUNJ. I think it's SPUNJ.
SPUNJ.
It says, I have a question. It says, talk about server lag. This is something that hasn't been talked about a lot at the RMR, but there was a couple of bits and pieces that came through. There was that screenshot from the FaZe Navi game where people are complaining about server lag, and there was also the BlameF Instagram post from today where he's like posted like 10% loss or something. So like looking forward to playing the RMR and 10% loss. Like Blast has been having some weird network issues for a couple of events now, and I don't know what's causing them and why they can't be solved, and I don't know how prevalent they are at the event because people haven't really been speaking about it a lot, but there has been a few complaints. That's all I know.
Yeah, no, and I don't know exactly what is the venue of the EU RMR.
It's the where their studio is. So
it's in Copenhagen.
Yeah, I know it's in Copenhagen. I was just like, because I just had a flashback to obviously 2017.
It's where they hosted like World Final 2 years ago.
Isn't that Royal Arena?
The same, huh?
This might be a very dumb question, but the lag is like practice lag, right? Where they have internet. They're practice.
No, it's even though it happens in matches
well.
too.
Yeah.
So it's in like 10% loss in the LAN matches.
To be honest,
I don't know about 10%, but we just know there's been some lag issues in the LAN matches as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the thing that BlameF posted, I think, was from the hotel, which is a completely different match. But if there's something fucked about the network setup, then it might be, happening in multiple locations. I'm not sure, but it's definitely. Hopefully, it's not too bad, and hopefully, it doesn't affect matches. I think that's the results of matches.
Yeah.
And most importantly, if it is happening, then they could, be able to sort that by the time we get to the major, because that's not really something we can tolerate. I would say that's not a good thing to have. Obviously, there's always issues at majors, but
those are the ones that feel like we can at least eliminate.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like something. Yeah, it doesn't seem like something like coming out of nowhere, right? We should be prepared for that.
Yeah, it seems like something. Once you're aware of the issue, it will get fixed by the time, I guess, the major comes. But obviously, it will suck if players experience it during their qualification stages and so on. But I'm not a network engineer, so I have literally no idea what could cause it, especially if it's like on local servers as well. So
yeah, I think that's it. Anything we missed? Anything we really need to talk about?
No, I think we've talked it through.
Yeah, I think just for the next show, I don't know when and how we're going to do it, because Rio is happening very shortly after the RMR. So
Monday is the last one, right? That we have a chance.
Yeah,
Sunday. No, Monday.
You have to. Well, you have to make sure that Chad is actually able to leave the bathroom.
We'll see about that. No, it is Sunday. Sorry.
I think he's already going to be in Rio by the time we can do anything. So it might be difficult to get the show there. We'll see what we can do essentially. But that's it. Thank you, vENdetta, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You tweeted recently about wanting to do more analyst stuff, analyst on broadcast stuff. What are you up to? What's your plans right now?
For right now, pretty free for all in that sense. So yeah, very eager to get back into broadcasting work, whether that's like color commentary or desk work or whatever have you. Like I'll film goofy videos for content. Like I don't care. I just wanna get back into the swing of things and do fun stuff, obviously with my passion. So that's really all I'm looking for. Who knows? Maybe I'll apply to become a journalist at HLTV.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, that's pretty much all I'm doing for right now. Again, trying to stay as updated on Counter-Strike and what's going on as possible, while still obviously being very, very bitter about the fact that I haven't gotten CS2 access.
Still nothing.
Honestly, you're not missing out too much. You're not missing out.
It's kind of like it was interesting for a week, and then I kind of like Dust 2 is fucking boring.
Yeah, no, I'm just hoping that there's like a second, third, and fourth wave, etc. When they hope, crossing fingers, like release Overpass and exactly. We'll see. I
mean, you're a big Overpass hater, so we'll see.
Oh, dude, I can't wait for they did that map. Just goes to bits and pieces.
Let's go. Okay, so that's it. That's the show. We did the show. I think it was a pretty good show. Write in the comments if you think it was a pretty good show. If you think it wasn't a pretty good show, don't write anything and just move on. Thank you. My ego would be very, very grateful for that. Shout out to our sponsors, BitSkins, SteelSeries, 22Bet. Shout out to SPUNJ's problems that are bothering him, and hopefully they go away overnight and he feels amazing tomorrow, so he can watch the RMR and be mad on Twitter as he was for the past 5 days. That's it. Good night.
Finally, I found what I was looking for. Now that my search is over, it's gonna be a tough choice. But fortunately, no need to choose. When you can just have them all. Buy and sell skins on BitSkins.com.
Here's a good vibe, here's a good vibe, here's a good vibe, good vibe.